Meeting yet, so that's great. First of all, I want to welcome everybody here. We're going to start with our board meeting, then roll into our annual meeting. After that, we'll break in between. I want to acknowledge that we have some guests here with us. First of all, I want to thank all of the staff for showing up tonight and giving up your evening. I really appreciate that. I want to thank Ian, our MLA, for, oh God, I'm in.
How did y'all sing on that?
I should have started this. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we'll rename it next election.
Well, that's appreciate him coming out tonight. So with that, I am going to turn this over to, who am I turning this over to? Jeff Mitchell from RBC to go through a present. No, I have to start with the regular business. Sorry. So, acknowledge visitors, conflict of interest declarations. All right, moving on to adoption of the agenda.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
A motion from Mayor Craig. Do we have a second?
Sorry.
Second. Seconded by Mayor Henderson. Questions? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. The next item is adoption of the minutes, and there is a small change in there. It is under the minutes of the previous meeting. I think it should say February, not January. I'm looking for it, I don't see it.
March. In March 25.
Should say March 27? Okay, it does have that.
Mine does.
Maybe they changed it.
All right,
I move that we adopt the minutes on March 27th. Any comes up.
heard the motion, we have a floor. Recommend for like. You guys are.
The Muppets over
Question? All those in favor?
there.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. So next, we'll move on to a presentation on the closure fund status. That would be Jeff Mitchell from RBC Dominion Securities, who is on screen.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me? I'm just trying to get my mute figured out.
Yeah, we got you.
So is Hollis there? Hollis, can you pull up one of the documents for me?
Sure, which one?
The Word document would probably be the best one to start out with. And I did, just to kind of start out, I have a tendency, if we do anything well in this business, it's make things convoluted and complex. So I did send out 3 documents. I am not going to review all of those with you guys today. You guys got a lot going on, and a lot to cover today. So we'll touch on the high points. And I think if Hollis, if you wanted to share those around, there's some really general information about the markets, where we are in the state of economy. I think you may find it interesting for your own portfolios or for your own stuff. But I think to look just at the Word document, speak to the closure fund. I don't know. How was the tour today? Did you guys see any eagles out there?
Lots of eagles.
Yeah.
Good.
And I see Mr. McEachern and Mr. Henderson are in the room tonight too. I goes, we got a whole new crew this year.
Right, the best.
Maybe I don't get invited to the special meetings.
Usually Alan always asks, it won't be recorded. He didn't ask that.
Very.
Get her. Oh, here we go.
How are you looking for?
Do you guys see it? I don't see it. Oh, geez, there we are. I just moved over. Okay. So I mean, the closure fund, I mean, I don't know how many people are new in the room. A lot of people may know what it is, but the rationale was an allocation gets put away for the closing of the commission or the landfill at that point. So I've been involved in this file for a long time. I bet it's probably 10 plus years. I think it's probably before Hollis. Um, and I think it was Dan Harrington was involved back when I first got involved. I don't know if Dan's still around or still in town. Um, we've always managed this portfolio with an extremely long time horizon. I mean, I think the landfill has lots of capacity, so this account's probably not likely to get utilized or needed for a while, which gives us a little bit of leverage as far as how aggressive we want to be on the portfolio. However, with working back and forth with the finance committee over the years, we've tried to build an investment policy that's aggressive enough, but still, because we're being fiduciaries on other people's money, we want to make sure that the capital is protected. So the portfolio isn't managed, like you might normally manage a portfolio that has a 50-year time horizon. You can certainly take some liberties there. There's a lot of conservatism built into the portfolio, which really does protect the capital. So this investment policy, this Word document that I have here, it shows the limits of where are to invest the money, and they're kind of the guide that I follow on managing the money. And there's been two or three in my 10 years. There's been two or three iterations of this policy. I think the first one we had zero allocation to U.S. equities in it. We then kind of talked that it made sense. It didn't make sense to not have any exposure to there, so we made some adjustments there. I think there was only 30% equity allowed. There was too much GICs. It went back and forth, and we did a bunch of things. And I think we really have kind of fallen on a pretty good long-term portfolio. You'll see the performance in a moment, but it's pretty good. So the limits that you see, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with investment discipline, but my kind of guidelines on how to manage the portfolio is on the equity side. When you think of equities, think of stocks, think of the stock market. We have a limit of 35 to 50%. We're at 47%. I try to float this portfolio as close to 50 as I can. The only reason that it's at 47 is because I ran this report Monday. I was out of the office all day, Tuesday and Wednesday. So this report had a couple down days last week, which pulled it below 50% equity. When the market comes down, it moves. With this thing having a 50 plus year time horizon, there is very, very, very limited need for having less than the maximum amount of stocks in the portfolio. You just need it. The fixed income, we have a range of 50 to 65, and you'll see that we're on the lower limit of that. About 52% of the portfolio is in fixed income. When I say fixed income, think of bonds, GICs, debt instruments. You give the bank money, you give a company money, they guarantee you an interest rate. It's really secure money. It doesn't generally return as much, but it's much less volatile and more secure. We then broke it down even further to Canadian equities, a range of 25 to 50%. We're currently at 33%. That's in line. The US equities 10 to 20%. We've historically carried pretty close to 20% US equities. We have let that come down a little bit. A little bit of that is the US equity market has been a little bit weaker than Canada. So some of that has come down on its own, and we haven't added back to it yet. On the foreign side, we're only carrying about 2% international, but we do have the ability to go up to 10. Without getting political, I think that we may see us start to carry a little bit more international in the portfolio. There's a lot of volatility going on in North America right now. There's a lot of what ifs. We're certainly not at that point yet. But sometimes for a defensive measure, there may be a potential point in the future where we start to say, yeah, we want to pick up a little bit more international exposure in these portfolios. Sometimes not necessarily for growth, sometimes just to de-risk it a little bit. And then you get into the fixed income portfolio, Canadian bonds, foreign bonds, and GICs, which is kind of interesting. I always consider GICs to be the same as bonds. The only difference is that they're guaranteed by the federal government. They were separated out in the original IPS, and they have maintained their separation there. we always have carried a 30% allocation to GICs. They're just guaranteed rates of return. The last 2 or 3 years, the rates have been great. They've been elevated rates, higher than we've seen in years. They have pulled back a little bit. We're rolling in the 3.5 range. You'll notice the only red point that is offside in the IPS is Canadian bonds. So Canadian bonds move around a little bit in interest rates, and when we're trying to stay at the lower limit of something, daily fluctuations can change where we are. And basically what's happened is bonds have come back a little bit based on where interest rates are going and interest rate expectations. But just to let you know, and I even put a note in there that we will be pulling back 2 or 3% from the Canadian equities and adding to those Canadian bonds to bring the policy back on side. Just to kind of stay on this page, Hollis, if you want to roll up a little bit, we can talk about the GIC portfolio. The GIC portfolio is basically run on a 5-year ladder. We try to get equal weighted years. This isn't showing. I've fixed it since Monday. Like I said, these returns were as of Monday. We had a GIC mature for about $125,000 on Monday. That's been redeployed. So essentially, the first on the far right, the first bar, that bar essentially disappeared Tuesday morning, and we've allocated it to the 2030 bucket. So we put about $75,000 in the 2030 bucket, and then we took that other 50,000 and distributed across the other years. So we essentially have the equal weighted GIC ladder, and that's sitting there cruising along, bouncing along with interest rates and guaranteed money. So that's kind of the when I sit down with the finance and audit committee, that this is the most important page. They want to just know that we're following the guidance. They want to know that the IPS is in line. And aside from that one thing, like I said, when the markets move up and down day to day, it's hard to keep everything green all the time. But the reality is sometimes they do sneak off, and we're going to rebalance that. And we were able to use some of that 125,000 from the GIC ladder that came due to get this all back online. If I can, Hollis, I can turn it over to questions too, but if you don't mind bringing up the portfolio summary, that would be the PDF file. And while you're bringing that up, guys, any questions, shoot away. We'll get into the performance here now when this next document comes up. Perfect. So if you want to scroll up 2 pages, Hollis, to the pie chart. Oh, yeah, back down 1. So essentially that pie chart right there, we don't need to spend any time on it. I essentially extracted the data from that pie chart to put it into the Word document to kind of show you what's on side and offside with the IPS. That's just a more colorful, fancy way to put it together. But let's scroll up, or actually maybe scroll down 1 page. So there's basically the value of the closure account. It is segregated into 2 accounts. One is the GIC account, and one is the investment account that carries the traditional investments in it, the stocks and bonds that we manage actively. The reason that I've kept the GIC separate was really a cost-saving measure. The portfolio fee, you don't want to be paying it on GICs, especially when they're earning, 2-3%. You don't want to be paying a portfolio manager to manage something that literally we're going to buy and sit there and not look at again for 5 years. So that's been pulled out of the portfolio. It also makes it cleaner for me to rebalance because GICs don't move with the market. The rest of the assets you own do. So with them being static, it's way easier to stay on side with the IPS because they're not going off side all the time. If you want to go up 2 pages, Hollis, I think we'll get to the page that essentially what we're all here for and the thing that most people want to look at. And interestingly enough, I didn't want to bother you, Hollis, today because I figured you had a lot on your plate, but I should have rerun the report today because it even looks a little bit better. This was run as of Monday, and we've had 2 or 3 good days in the market, but I don't know if you guys can all see that there. the year to date rate of return on the portfolio, which would kind of be in that bottom right quadrant. Essentially these four quadrants all show the same thing, but the bottom right one is really likely the most important. Your year to date, the portfolio was down 2.5%. Now, keep in mind, on Monday, the S&P 500 was down 12, Dow was down about 10, and TSX was down about 6. So this portfolio is really, really defensive. In the same token, if you look down one line, you'll see that the last year's rate of return was 8.3. Well, the S&P 500 probably returned about 18% over the last 8 years. So, this portfolio, only having 50% of it in the stock market, you're not going to be that correlated with the ups and downs of the market. They are correlated to a degree. They're positively correlated. There's no doubt about it. When the market's up, this is going to be up. When the market's down, but the degree to which they're up and down is severely muted. I can guarantee if I ran that report right now, this portfolio is positive year to date. I ran it this morning and it was negative 1.29. And then the markets finished handsomely up today too, which you probably picked up another percentage point today, just in positive. Not that 2 days matter, but they do make it a lot more fun when I can pull in and say that the portfolio is positive when everyone's watching the news and thinking the world's coming to an end. And it very well may be. I'm not here to tell you guys that that's happening or not.
Put it on the bottom.
I have listen, I don't know. I know a lot of you guys personally in there, but the reality is the last month of my life, I might change careers and become a therapist. I've become less of a money manager and more of a therapist in the last couple of weeks. So if you keep grinding down the list a little bit, the 2-year number 8.95. So that means the portfolio on average has done 8.95 on a 2-year basis. So it's probably done 17 and a half divided by 2. Its 3-year number 5.74. So there's, let's call it 17% over the last 3 years divided by 3. The 5-year number 8.42. That's a big number. 8.5% on a 5-year basis, average annual, is really strong. I will tell you, especially for this portfolio, it is a bit of a misnomer. You don't need to pat me on the back too much about it, because these annual returns are April to April. And if you recall where we were in April of 2020, we were in the teeth of the pandemic. And essentially that 5-year rate of return is almost from the bottom of the market of the pandemic up. So a March to March number would be much different, but it's probably still pretty good. It would probably still be 6% on an average annual. Since inception, since I've had this portfolio, it's 5.15 on an average annual basis. This is not in the IPS because we're not allowed to put it in the IPS. There's just some regulatory stuff around target rates of return. The target rate of return of this portfolio was 4. It was what the goal was. They wanted to beat inflation. At the time, inflation wasn't what we're dealing with now, and it wasn't as big of an issue. But at the time, it was like, something. And I'm going back to the original board. It was, we want to do 2 times inflation. We think 4% is the long term. We've been beating it just essentially by owning high quality stuff, keeping an eye on it, and the IPS is good. The IPS is really good. I love to sit there and say this thing's got a 50-year time horizon. It should be 100% equities. But I also understand that, it's not our money. It's got a very important use, and protecting it's important. So I think what we have built here and what you guys in the committee have built, it's good. Operating within it is easy, and the performance is good. So, we do not need to go through the list and talk about this, that, and the other thing. We don't need to talk about what funds are doing what. There's another, I think it's a PowerPoint document. Hollis, if you just wanted to send that out at the end, it's really self-explanatory. It's got some market-related stuff. I I think the only thing, without keeping you guys here for 20 minutes, listen to my nonsense about this, is we are actively keeping an eye on this. And like I said, where the IPS allows us to get up to 10% in foreign equities, or it lets us up to 20% in the US, we are moving things around in there to try to take advantage of where things are. Don't try to ask me where they're going, because there isn't anyone on the planet that knows the answer to that. But we're keeping an eye on it, where it's a very dividend heavy portfolio, which means that you're buying blue chip stuff. We're focused on companies that have the ability to pay a dividend. So if they're dividend payers, by their very nature, they're more conservative stocks anyway, because their financial statements are such that they have the, retained earnings or the recurring revenue to continue to pay dividends out. So if you guys have any questions, fire away. If you want to move on to the next thing and kind of digest that information, and someone from the team send me emails, it's up to you guys. I know you guys probably got a busy evening, and I don't want to chew it all up, but any questions?
The bottom line is we're doing all right. Is that correct? This.
Did you, I'm not sure if you heard the question.
I did. I'm sorry. I didn't hear it. Sorry.
I guess the bottom line is we're doing all right.
Yeah, no. The portfolio is doing.
Yeah.
Portfolio is doing very, very well for a 50% equity portfolio to do.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. Here's what I talk to people all the time. The S&P 500, which is 100% equity, has a 50-year track record of doing on average 9%. Okay, so since 1970, with the tech bubble, 9/11, financial crisis, COVID-19, Black Monday in 1987, all of these different events that happened, the 10-year rolling average on the S&P 500 for 50 years is about 9%. It hardly wavers. When you have a portfolio that has 50% equity, it's only entitled to 50% of that 90, or of that 9%. Does that make sense? Like, we want, our goal is to try to beat the market, but you're only going to get a return that's equivalent to your exposure to that asset. So if 100% equity is doing a 9% long year rate of return, a 50% equity portfolio by its nature should do about 4.5. And this is doing better than that. And that's kind of how I measure things. Everyone says, I want to beat the market. I want to beat the market. And that's true. Our goal is to try to beat the market. But sometimes in times like this, our goal isn't necessarily to beat the market on the upside all the time. It's to beat it on the downside and be more defensive. And I mean, this portfolio has that in spades. You do it in a couple ways. One is by owning fixed income, and one is by owning stocks that are bigger blue chip stuff. We're not taking this portfolio and trying to, invest in upper moose pasture mines, trying to hope someone hits a vein of, gold that's going to double or triple your money. We're buying established businesses. So the portfolio is doing very well, and it's ahead of what the committee's initial goals were for the portfolio. And I always tell Claudette when I'm there, is I got a camp about 2 miles down the road. So the closure fund is more important to me than it is for anyone. I want to make sure that place is taken care of and done well for the long term of my property.
Right by the Food Ridge Road. It's campus. It's pretty close.
Any other questions?
Is that where you got that big moose?
No, the last big moose we got on the American side, it was David's license, and we would have got that moose about 5 miles from Loon Bay on the American side.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to get one close this year. There's some down there. I'm getting them on camera all the time, so there's lots around.
There's none left in Full Ridge. They've all been hit by a car.
Geez, you got all that new pavement. People be flying through there.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the closure fund, maybe? All right, hearing none, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming tonight to talk about it. If we have anything, maybe we can follow questions through Hollis and go from there. That's okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Go Leafs.
Oh.
It was all good.
You know, Bruins are.
He was doing so good until then.
I need to trust them.
Now I have questions.
Listen
up to us. This year I go.
Presentation of the 2024 audited financial statements.
Really?
Hi, how's it going, everyone?
Good.
Good. And I'll you know, maybe be in favor of the other half of the crowd. I'm a Habs fan and it's not looking as good, but you know, it's a more favorable choice, I would consider anyways. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. So at this point, and like we've done in years past, I'll go over the results of our audit and where we stand as far as, you know, the audited financial statements and our auditor's opinion. And then maybe I'll turn the floor back over to Mark to go over some of the financial statements, give a brief highlight of how things look in those as he's done in years past. So within your board package, you would find a few documents that come from our office. The first one that I'd like to go over is the communication of audit results document. So what this document is, and I mean, Hollis, if you want to bring it up on screen, great. If not, I know it's in everyone's package and nothing really you need to see on screen for it, but it may be a guide. So what this document does is it serves as a summary, highlights of our audit. It really serves as a vehicle to present where there's any kind of findings, any issues, any, you know, abnormal situations or things that we uncovered or looked up during the audit. So I'll go through this kind of you know, section by section and give you a brief highlight of what we find throughout the audit. So if you just want to scroll into the first page there, Hollis, the first one we always start with is obviously the first paragraph describes, you know, why this is required, and it's, you know, a required communication for those charged with governance, which is, you know, management, the board, and anyone involved in a capacity as such. But the status of the audit. So all of our audit work is done. We've completed and finalized everything. At this point, we just need an approval of the draft financial statements, as well as a signed management representation letter, which are those two final items we always check off at the end of each audit engagement, which is obviously the goal here tonight. Details our responsibility as auditors and kind of the, you know, the jargon that we're required to conform to the Canadian auditing standards as part of doing the audits. And then starting on the next page, there's kind of a laundry list of different items. So the first being independence, of course, as an auditing, in an audit engagement, we need to be independent of the client. So here's where we'd note any threats to independence, nothing has come up or brought to our attention with that regard. On internal controls, the audit itself doesn't provide any assurance over the control environment of the organization, but we do, as part of the process, if we identify any weaknesses in controls, areas of improvement, and things that just can be beneficial to the organization, we bring that by way of presenting a management letter. So this year, we're not issuing one. Nothing's really came to our attention or anything that deemed to be, you know, material enough to bring. In years past, you might have noted we issued one where that, you know, we recommended an engineering report be prepared or an engineering firm be engaged each year to assess the capacity of the landfill and the site, which obviously materially could impact the estimate for the asset retirement obligation. So that was completed in the year. So that kind of negates that management point. One that we always consider, and I mean, it's probably present in most all audits we do, is segregation of duties. You know, anytime you have smaller organizations where that it just doesn't make sense to hire a big, robust, you know, multiple people handling different transactions on the accounting side, there's always that threat to segregation of duties. So nothing we reported, but again, something we always consider each year. Starting on the next page, fraud and illegal acts, legal regulatory issues. This is where that if any of these items were uncovered, we would note them. Obviously, nothing has come to our attention based off inquiries of management, inquiries of the board, and any inquiries and procedures that we might have made throughout the audit process. The summary of misstatements. So you will note there are two misstatements, and what these are uncorrected misstatements. So items that are not necessarily correct for the fiscal year, but are either reported or not reported in the year. So two of them here, they both relate to actually prior period errors, where that the first one, there was a tangible capital asset that was disposed of in 2023, and the issue here was that it was essentially a trade-in with no cash going either way. So it didn't get picked up through doing bank reconciliations or any transactions because it never hit the cash or the bank balance. So what happened is that although there was no cash changing hands for accounting purposes, there really was a gain on the disposal of that asset that should have been reported last year. It's been updated and reported in the current year. So we just show it as, a prior period or an error in the current year because essentially the income is overstated as it should have been presented last year. It's not big enough for us to have to go back and restate prior year figures. It's still small enough that we can leave that as an uncorrected error in this case for the current year. Likewise with the reinvested dividends, just an amount that was missed last year that are now recorded or picked up in the current year. So two, in our standpoint, pretty minor uncorrected misstatements, and something we can certainly live with within the financial statements without modifying our audit opinion or our results to the audit itself. And that tangible capital asset one was a unique one. It just because a lot of it could have went unnoticed where that, like I said, there was no cash changing hands on that transaction. Summary of disclosure matters. So this is one that, we brought it up this year or something new this year. And it really come to a part. We went through a practice inspection as we do every 2 to 3 years, and this was one that we've noted that was never really brought to our attention, that where there is a budget presented, disclosing it on a certain statement, so disclosing on the statement of changes in net assets itself. It's not, in our mind, it's not a big deal to have this not there. The budget's presented where it should be on the statement of revenues and expenditures, but it is something that the practice inspector brought up on another, not this audit, on another audit under the same standard. So we did just more so to document it, to show we've considered it. It's been there, but we at our point, we're not requiring any change to the financial statements. No new significant accounting policies, no significant transactions, and significant transactions we'd consider ones to be unique or outside the normal course of business. We know that the business has changed a lot, or the organization has changed a lot the last couple of years with the municipality reform and the certain funding or grants and whatnot going through the organization, but nothing that's significant outside the normal course of business for the fiscal 2020 or 2024 that we just completed. Sensitive accounting estimates and disclosures, of course, we know there's a very large estimate recorded in the financial statements. The asset retirement obligation, formerly the post-closure liability, that is one that, if assumptions or calculations within change materially, it does affect the financial statements a lot. So we always note that that is, a sensitive accounting estimate and bring that to your attention. And obviously there's lots of note disclosures that Mark's added within the financial statements to detail everything that's going into that calculation. And of course, we received full cooperation during the audit. Obviously we've had no issues in this year and years past with any of the the audit process. Obviously Claudette, Hollis, Mark, and any of the other team that help us out have been very helpful this past year in helping get the audit done, and obviously in a timely fashion. And then consultants with consultations with other accountants, obviously Mark Porter, where that hired as an external party, we always note that being there as well. So that gives us, a high-level summary of the audits, the findings, the things that we've noted as part of the audit. Again, although there's a few items in there, nothing to worry about, nothing that would lead you to believe, that the financial statements are not fairly presented in any way. The two errors that are there, we call them errors, but at the end of the day, the ending balances for 2024 are where they should be. It's just that it's, 1 year or the other. It should have been in 2023, and now it's in 2024 is all that really occurred there. So they're really not a big deal from an audit standpoint. And like I said, the material amount of them are really not to a degree that's going to affect our audit opinion. So with that, Hollis, I'll get you to flip over to the financial statements, and we can go into our actual auditor's report. So it's a 2-page report that is our summary, is our conclusion of the audit and our audit engagement. The main, paragraph in here is our opinion. That's, our ultimate conclusion, where that we are saying that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects. So that means that, they're all in line with the public sector accounting standards. There's no material uncorrected misstatements that lead us to believe that the financial statements, are off in one way or the other. So that first paragraph there on screen, you'll see is the opinion. Then we obviously go through the basis of opinion, how we come about that. The one new paragraph you'll see is noted in here is that other matter paragraph. Nothing scary about it. It's just something that we've been adding to most of our public sector accounting standards, where that there's certain schedules or notes that are within financial statements that are not necessarily required for the public sector accounting standards, but are there for purposes of additional information, something that's in there with, a lot of municipalities, anyone that's involved with municipalities, which I know a lot of folks are, you'll see these types of schedules as well. They're common in most all public sector organizations as being a reporting there. So we're just noting that they're there for additional information is all. And it's more of just a formality that we need to add to our auditor's report. And then below that, you'll find our responsibilities of management and those charged with governance of the financial statements. So that's most of you all here in this room, anyone involved with management or, advising of the organization. And then into the second page, you'll find our auditor's responsibilities, what we have to do in order to ultimately issue this financial statements and the auditor's report, I should say, of the financial statements. So that's kind of an overview of the audit, our audit opinion. Obviously, from our standpoint, it's been a successful year as far as the audit goes. There's nothing new abnormal. There's no new risks or areas of concern that, I need to bring to your attention or things that you really need to act on. I think how things are being handled right now is, there's lots of, fiscal due diligence and planning that goes on, which obviously has contribute to the success of the organization. And obviously it speaks, we have relatively few to no adjusting journal entries each year, which obviously helps to, for you guys to rest assured, that the internal staff, the accounting team there are, have a good handle on things, and the stuff you get periodically throughout the year, you can rely on it. There's not material adjustments that we have to make each year to get the statements up to standard with the Canadian accounting standards that are required. So you can kind of rest easy that way, knowing that things are in good hands on your side. So I'll open before Mark goes into the financial statements, gives a brief overview. Are there any questions on the audit, our engagement findings of anything like that?
Just a quick question on the summary of disclosure matters. I'm not overly familiar with that, but like a disclosure deficiency basically means that something is missing or inadequate. Is there something, maybe I missed it, but what specifically would be missing and inadequate?
That's exactly it. So as part of any financial statements, there's minimal standards that have to be met as far as disclosures. Now, some of them we basically say the disclosure is not material enough for us to say, okay, we're not issuing our audit report or we're not issuing a clean audit report unless this is in there. This is kind of a minor, very moot point where that you have to present or should be presenting the budget on the accounting or the statement of changes in net assets. So where it reconciles that net asset, you should also be presenting a budget there. It's something that I would say 95% of our public sector auditing engagements don't present it because it's historically never really represented, but technically in the standards, it should be there. And it is something too that kind of come up in our practice inspection this past year. So we note it in the file, we note it as a disclosure deficiency, but it's never something that we'd modify our opinion for because we really don't think it's that material.
Yeah, I'd say most don't do it. Would that be a safe assumption then?
Yes.
Yeah, that was new to me. Okay, thank you. That clarifies as I missed the first time around. Thank you.
No worries.
Anyone else?
So that summary of misstatements, those were amounts that I pointed out to the auditor after I started doing the year-end statements that I was checking the assets to see that they actually were insured, and that's when trade got picked up. So and just trade-in value was the same as what the purchase of the new asset was, netted to zero.
Yeah, and I should clarify, us presenting it as, an uncorrected error this year is somewhat misleading because it's really Mark's correction to get things. It's really an uncorrected error should have been in there in the prior year. So it's just, like I said, it's really belongs in the prior period columns where this year it's just caught up in the current year and it's not material enough, like I said, for us to go back and restate prior year. If it was something where that, it was a few $100,000 worth of gains, then okay, we might be looking at a restatement, but where the balance is really only 80,000, it's not material enough for us to worry about it being in 2023 or 2024, or vice versa. So, and yeah, it's not really something we can even take credit for. Mark brought it to our attention.
Yeah, and it doesn't affect our second previous year surplus calculations either, just the nature of the trade and the purchase. So we want to flip over into the actual statements, the one that's got page 3 at the top. Back to the auditor's report. So this is our consolidated statement of operations. First column is our budget column. And when we do our budget in the fall, we budget for a 0 surplus. But for public sector, our second previous year surplus calculation or second previous year deficit calculations are not income or expense in the PSAB statements. Same with capital expenditures from operations and debt payments of principal. So those things all come out. So when you make those adjustments, we actually budgeted for a deficit of $1,544,000. And a lot of that's because the capital assets we already purchased with previous year revenues, they're being amortized every year. The actual numbers, we ended up with a deficit of $621,000. And the accumulated operating surplus at the start of the year was $15,865,000. So we end up with $15,244,000. And that's not all sitting in cash. So it's invested in our containment cells, our leachate treatment, vehicles, equipment, buildings. Next page is a statement of remeasurement gains and losses. So because we have these closure funds, they're remeasured every year end at fair market value for most items in there. So the gains that we end up with there for portfolio investments, $186,970 is the unrealized gains in the year. So that reflects how much portfolio went up. And the foreign exchange number above it, it reflects the receivables we hold that are in US dollars, US customers. And so it's a change in the exchange rate from one year to another, or from the time the sale was made. And as we realize things, they get transferred to the actual statement of operations. So the net remeasurement gain for the year went up $130,223. The beginning balance was $215,492. So our remeasurement gains or losses at the end of the year are $345,715. Next page is our statement of financial position. So those two ending surplus numbers are on the bottom of this page, and that reconciles to our net assets. So cash and GIC, stuff like that, $5,391,000. Our receivables, we got trade receivables, amounts from the federal and provincial government, and portfolio investments of $2.2 million. So our total financial assets, which are in the form of cash equivalents, are $8,350,000. Our financial liabilities would be bank indebtedness, which is credit cards, accounts payable and accrued liabilities due to the federal government, provincial government, deferred grants that we have not used yet, and our asset retirement obligation, which is the biggest thing there, $6,589,000. So based on this, if we realized our assets for what they're reported at and paid our liabilities, we'd still have $1,116,000 of net financial assets. Then we have non-financial assets. So those are the things that are non-cash. So it's our buildings, equipment, containment cells. Total cost $47 million, $33 million in amortization. So they have a net value of $14,373,000. There's a little bit of inventory of supplies and prepaid expenses. So our overall surplus is the 15,589,000. Lots of big numbers. Next page is that statement of net financial assets. Or changes in net financial assets, so. Kind of shows. Those numbers that are above where net financial assets are, what those changes were. I'm not gonna go through that one. And even one that's worse over here is the statement of cash flows, page 7. It's just as good.
It's true. Timeline on the deferred payments.
Nope,
No.
no, it's just money we get to do things. Well, some of them might have a time,
Okay.
but. For most of them, it would be like March 31st. Okay. We shall skip over the county policy notes. Nobody wants to talk about those. Or hear them. The next big one I want to talk about would be on page 14. At the top.
Yeah, I'm not showing those. Yeah, it's on the one. No. Yeah, it's your.
I left it there. It's note 9. Manchester City. Probably another. Yeah. What? Oh. Oh, you have the numbers that are cut off, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's note number 9.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says asset retirement obligation. Ah. Oh, that's the next, the one before that. That's the one, yes. Let's get there. Further that way.
Mine says on here. Okay. Thank you, mine's down here.
Yeah, I guess they're going, they're upside down and backwards.
Yeah.
Well, they knew you had a challenge.
I know.
Everybody on the right page now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the asset retirement obligation, we have to take care of the site when it's closed up. So what we have done before is we said, we'll go as far as cell 19. And go to the higher elevation and say, that will be the end of it, to put like a time period to calculate the liability. So that will be 41 years from now, when that will be finished. And then probably at that time, we'll keep building along. And the slope that will not be capped as we keep moving along, it'll just keep moving down further.
You said you still be here.
Yeah. If we.
That's where a nursing home is gonna be.
So if we continue with our footprint, we should be good until the year 2150. Based on current garbage rates. The next page. I guess going
That is just.
to the left,
That is just the point you picked. to do the
Right.
Calculation, it's not the end of the leg.
yeah. So reconciliation of aggregate carrying amount, we have the asset retirement obligation. Balance at the beginning of the year was 6,448,000. Mike did some capping during the year, so that dropped 8,000 off the liability. The accretion expense from the passage of time is that liability, because it's a net present value calculation with inflation, it keeps going up. Or actually, that's the actual rate of return, that's the 4.5%. And then revisions to cash flow estimates, every time we do something, it changes the future estimate of cash flows. We've changed the estimate there in the obligation. So the balance at the end of the year that we estimate is 6,589,000. And the amount of those asset retirement costs that are capitalized and then amortized in the income statement is 4.22 million. We just have a net liability of, or sorry, yeah, there's a net liability of 2,367,000. And we have 2,464,000 in the closure funds itself. So we got about 100,000 extra in there for funding. And over note 13 is the surplus deficit reconciliation. So it says page 17 on mine. Over there. Yeah, okay.
The other day.
Yeah, so it lists all our surplus and deficit by department here. So the bottom ones are 2024. So we've got 2001-24 for cooperative and regional planning, 21,985 for local planning, solid waste is 718,493. Tourism promotions got a little deficit. Economic development, surplus 28,942, community development, 26,038. Regional transportation's got a little deficit, 3,188, public safety's got a little surplus at 3,454. Recreation's got 47,460 for a surplus. So those 2024 surpluses will carry forward onto our 2026 budget.
I'll be donations fund. That's the rational.
You just want the reserve fund at the bottom, don't you?
Well, yeah, that's even better.
Yeah.
Build another garrison.
No.
And I think that's all that I have to say. There's lots of numbers there. If you got any questions, you can always shoot me an email.
Questions or comments?
Motion was moved. Oh, I was gonna make a motion to have Mark stay on for another 5 years. Second.
Not full. Yeah,
I start at 5, I could maybe.
I have 1 year left.
Oh, my. So you're going to bargain here, okay?
So what do we need for motions on?
In the AGM, we have a motion to accept the.
Okay, so any questions before we leave this agenda item? All right, I think you're off the hook, then.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, so then we're moving down to staff reports, the annual reports, and up first is solid waste.
Very typical year for us. We completed a cell this year. The way we do it is we run construction roughly 2 to 3 years. And completion year, then we'll start putting waste in some near future. Photos. The construction is in addition to placing waste, accepting waste, household hazardous waste. We're still. Basically, the top picture is the landfill still being constructed. We did subgrade last year. I guess it went last year, 2023, 2024. Installed clay liner. And on top of clay liner goes the rubber membrane. You can see that being installed there. Collection piping. And then protection for the HDPE. Put it up to there, and then a final protection layer and grout before we start placing waste in. It's pretty, it's just a process, usually takes 2 to 3 years, and we build one roughly every 2 to 3 years. This one is gonna take us a little longer because we've lost some US waste, so this one's gonna last a little bit longer, but there's another conversation around that. We also do final capping on top of the waste, once the waste is up to a certain height. Then we'll put clay over top. And grass all that, just to keep the weather out of the landfill, so that we don't create leachate in our leachate treatment system. And there you go. Our landfill gas system, it's the same idea, it's an ongoing thing. Probably if you look back in last year's general report, it's almost exactly the same picture, because it's just done every so often. So those are collection pipes, for gas extraction. And we're doing, this is kind of an interesting. It's half an experiment, it's been working good. Normally you drill into the waste, which we've done before, and extract that way. This is something we're able to place ourselves, there's excavation piece of pipe. And they seem to be working quite well. Our engineer, he just came back from a course in Wisconsin. And somebody basically presented this as the newest greatest thing. So Peter's like, I knew we should have wrote a paper on this,
Yeah.
because they seem to be working really well. So we'll see, we're. Evanston landfill is doing something similar with some fingers off of it. St. John is doing something different again. And Moncton is doing something similar to what we're doing. And we're all gonna just comparing notes and seeing what's gonna work the best. Cause the drilling of the landfill, gas extraction wells is extremely expensive. And mobilization of the equipment to do it, there's not a whole lot of those machines around. Last time St. John did it, I think it cost them $100,000 just to move the machine to drill the wells. So, and this is landfill gas it's always been on our radar ever since we opened. It's just a part of the treatment of the waste is treating the gas that comes off of it. In recent years, the greenhouse gases and emissions being the forefront, we're getting drilled down on this stuff, more and more all the time. Part of our operating license from the province, certificate of operation, actually has a section in there where we have to produce a report, saying what we've done, what we're doing, and in the future, they were really hard on it, and they kind of backed off now, about regulating all this stuff. They did before, it was just on the landfill, operators to best practices. Now they're looking at actually, building rules and stuff around it, but it was coming fast, now it's backed off, so. We'll see how it actually works and what they will accept, what they won't accept as, extraction.
Are we able to use it yet?
No,
No.
we're just burning it. It's, the thing with it is we don't produce enough of it to make it worthwhile. Like, we looked at this back, 2010, 2012, 13, we did a couple of reports on, what we could do with it, how much we might get. That was even before I think we built the flare itself. And it was so expensive to put in the infrastructure and run it and maintain it, that we would have been producing power at a loss. Like at that point, I think NB Power was gonna pay us 6 cents kilowatt hour, and it would have cost us 12 to actually produce. So, people are always, oh, we wanna make power with that gas, cause it's good, right? But in reality, flaring is actually the best treatment for it, because it burns 99% of it. Where an engine, it only gets like 98% destruction, 97% destruction, so. It's not a bad thing to burn, put it that way.
Wasn't there also an issue with it being caustic, the gas?
The gas, because landfill gas, people think the landfill gas is methane, just like you have in your house, natural gas. Well, it's not all methane, it's about best case is 50% methane. The rest is other waste gases, H2S and things like that, helium, all different stuff. But the problem with H2S is it creates sulfuric acid, and it will actually eat up the insides of the engine. It'll burn valves. It'll, you know, you need a whole bunch of stuff on the front end to clean it up. But you know, there's programs. There's a time coming where it may be beneficial to do something with it. We had conceptual designs years ago on heating the buildings with it, with a big boiler and things like that. But it's just, we're not producing enough gas, even though we got over 1 million tons in place. We're just not extracting enough of it to make it worthwhile, yeah. You know,
That's part of the issue. We couldn't get enough gas to even make it flare
well, it's consistent now.
consistently.
Yeah, not long ago it was like that.
Yeah, we're still in that mode, like over the winter, we couldn't get it to burn up to temperature, we couldn't get enough gas out of it to get it to burn to 1700 degrees, so we basically had to turn it off, because that's our operating rule has to burn at 1700 degrees. You know, the flare was designed for 800 CFM, we're only pulling 100. You know, and this is the problem with landfill gas. There's a little bit of, it's almost like there's no hard and fast rules to it. You know, you can drill a well here, it's like drilling for water, you drill there, you get water, you drill over there, you get nothing. But the engineers and the government is all saying, oh no, that's the one you gotta go, you gotta get regulated by. So it becomes a bit of a fine line to try and extract the gas and do something with it, because you kind of never know what you're gonna get when you drill a well. So best case scenario doesn't always come up, and that's what we're seeing. We were supposed to get, I think it was back in back in 2013, we were supposed to be getting 500. That's why the thing was set at 800. And we're still not getting, and we drilled and now we're trying to slope wells and let's see what we get, but it's all a cost. It's like our treatment system, you know, we have to do it, we have to treat our leachate before we can release it, and it's the same thing, we have to treat our gas is coming off before we release it. Monitoring wells, we do, because of the next bank of cells, we had to remove some monitoring wells a little further away. That's the way it's done. They're only supposed to be so far from an active waste filling. Then they move further and further. So these ones had to be moved out of the way for our next bank of cells. So we go through that. They're all at different levels. They're deep wells, shallow, and medium. Look for anything that might be getting away. That's we've got 35 nests. Well, not now, 35, 37 nests of those around the site. We spend probably around $200,000 a year testing just water. That includes liquid gas wells, or excuse me, the water quality monitoring wells, and then our process treatment testing. And this is another program that came online with us in 2024, is an electronics recycling program, and they gave us a nice little container to do it. Quite a nice thing, it's brand new. Place to store the materials that people bring us, TVs and things like that. And this is some great work for the next bank of cells. It just beginning. It's been puttering away at that for a while. It's kind of a low area. If you're down there right now, that area is backed up with water. So we've got to pump the water out, we got to dry it up, we got to get it built up far enough that we're out of the water, of the runoff water, and so we can begin to construct the base of the cell, which if we go way back to the first of the slides, that's what we have to get to. And this end is to get the water to flow correctly, there's there's a pretty good fill at this end. We've probably got a couple of meters before we even start building pieces of cell.
So how often do you fill that container?
Which.
The recycle one, the electronic one there.
We, yeah, we can get to that. There's some more slides at the end there. What do we do, Tricia? I know you wrote it, man. Tricia does the waste reduction. We did a ton and a half of electronics, and that included 273 display devices. So you don't fill the container and they take the container. There's like tote bags in there. So we fill out the tote bags, and then I'll come take more. We get a little bit of money here.
They're not things.
All the billings list stuff?
They're paying us for.
Paying.
Or paying, yeah, sorry, yeah.
It's an EPR program, it's an extended producer responsibility, so when you buy a TV, there's a little cost in there. Then that goes to pay for this program, which when we do the program, person or pro, they are the companies that are hired, I guess, by Samsung and Motorola to manage the program for them. Same as Circular Materials is paid by the big producers to manage the recycling. It's the same kind of program, it's structured. So buy a box of cornflakes, there's a few cents in there for recycling. It trickles back to us to a certain point. Yeah, and this is the overall recycling tonnage for 2024. No, we were just discussing this. I'm not so sure we're supposed to show you that, because technically that information belongs to Circular Materials. Because when we do recycling, we're working for Circular Materials. You know, whoever selects it for me, I don't think anybody opted in, but there's a company that collects it. And then they bring it to us and we do transfer and keep the records for that. And they actually pay us to do that. Where before we were paying out big money, now we're actually getting paid to do our portion. And we collect the information for them and then they produce a report, so. Hopefully they don't get excited on us, but I think everybody's is doing okay.
So can you tell us proportionally, because I mean, it looks like it's population graph.
Yeah.
But proportionally compared to waste to recycling, are we all doing okay?
So.
That's stuff right now, so how's that?
Yeah, but you.
Yeah, you're on here.
Yeah, the only one.
Yeah, like the
Yeah,
new
but-
program started in May of last year. We did before that. So
Where'd it go?
I assume they're gonna introduce an report for you to give you those numbers on capita and things like that. Because they do some, we do, I guess, so we do some testing and things and you have to keep all those numbers for them. And then I assume they will produce a report for Recycling Brunswick and then eventually you'll see it.
To us, we only have one client,
Yeah,
Circular Materials.
Right, yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but just to kind of an aside, the more recycling you can get your people to do,
That's
the
why I'm asking.
better. it is.
Because I don't pay for this stuff.
No.
That's right. I
No,
know.
it's.
That's why I want more there.
The more you can
Yeah.
get into your recycling, the better off it is
Yeah.
coming across the scales.
So that brings me, I asked this a meeting or so ago, the glass jar thing. I think that would be tremendous for our municipalities. We could get that out of our regular waste.
Yeah.
And I know that you can take it to some of our depots ourselves, but they won't pick it up yet. It'd be really nice to get that. That's a lot of weight.
Depots yourself, those bars.
Like you can take recycling, I think. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, they take it.
Yeah,
I used to take it.
but we gotta convince people to take it there so that we limit the waste. We get the weight. but
Yeah, I don't
that's
think
huge.
the bottle return, they won't, they will take it. They take,
Goals.
they
Yeah.
take glass, they
And
take
styrofoam.
styrofoam.
Yeah.
And flexible plastic is what they call it, it's like plastic bags.
Like the.
Um,
Oh,
Plastic.
yeah, anymore?
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a shrink wrap or whatever you take.
Oh, yeah.
plant shells like your lettuce or your berries coming.
Yeah,
As long as it's. Yeah, they will take cardboard, but it has to be associated with the bottles you take back. So if you took a case of beer
Hmm.
back, they would take the box that the beer bottles came,
Hmm.
but you can't take them just straight up cardboard.
well, they used to make money off of it, they don't anymore.
The price goes up and down, so that, it's,
That's a big deal.
Yeah, they,
but,
I'll take corrugated cardboard on there, yeah.
yeah.
are you,
More you get it over.
are you guys involved yet?
Let's start May 1st.
May 1st, yeah, that's the next thing is, it's kind of funny, they won't give us the numbers on who is signed up, but it's the multifamily dwellings come on May 1st. And also the schools.
So,
Now, this is.
Circulars then take on that?
Yep, it's part of the program.
so how are they gonna do that? They're gonna put dumpsters in these,
They're going to, he said they're going to do just what they do for homes. You're gonna have,
each one, okay.
everybody's gonna have their own cart, as far as I know.
You have a ton of carrots in the Beacon,
Yes. The schools out there.
Who's getting bid?
51 of them.
Hurts.
Carts.
They didn't already have them?
Those blue cardboard bins.
They didn't already have them?
They had our old system.
I was saying, cause ours gonna be picked up at our.
Big blue car.
That
They
big.
put it on the third or
Building
whatever.
outside of the beacon to put.
The. Right?
Little blue cart.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do it at our school, but so they don't know that it's all doing that.
Well, this is it. They were kind of doing it on this. Almost, if you put it out there, they'd take it, because they were doing residential, but now it's gonna be official, they have to do. And circular is paying. And also apartment buildings are now coming online May 1st. We're having,
Interesting.
the fella, my counterpart in Woodstock. He asked the question of him is, okay, well, can you give me a list of who signed up so I can go beat on some doors and get other people signed up? And they wouldn't give him that information. So we had a managers meeting in a month or so, so we've got they're taking it all on and but how good a job they're doing at, actually canvassing those apartment owners and saying, hey, why don't you sign up and you'll pay less for.
Oh, they should be all over it, yeah, for sure. So they're gonna go, like right now, we're 3 units and under. 3 apartments, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, everything's gotta be done now.
So after that, yes.
Yeah, all kind of, it's like the 3 and under is goes with the stuff we're picking up, or we're not picking up, we're circulars picking up now, but after that, they have to do multifamily dwelling, this part of the plan.
Reduces the cost for rent. Well, indirectly,
And they have to provide the bins, they have to
it's
do
passed
it.
on, it does get passed on to renters, right? You private solid waste, yeah.
The solid waste side, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause they're not mixed in with regular residential over 3, right, in your area, I don't know what anybody else does.
So that's coming, right? That is there someone actually promoting, like,
This-
outside of this market?
This is supposed to be circular materials.
Yeah, see, I haven't, this is first I heard, so.
Yeah, and I think that's a common theme.
They're not doing it for business at all.
No.
So that's an ongoing challenge you have, like in downtown Sayers, there's not enough land to have their own cardboard, so they don't know what to do with it, it's.
We accept commercial cardboard for free. If it's clean commercial cardboard, we will take it here and deal with it.
Pass that on, it's just the distances.
That's the problem, gotcha.
What they do is they chip away at it in their home, guaranteed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that, when they started all this, that was one of the things that everybody kind of brought up, was that if you want to get the best bang for your buck, you should start at the commercial side and then move to residential.
Because it's more profitable, yeah.
Well, it's a low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
It's easier, it's cleaner, it's,
Totally makes
but they went directly to the residential and left the commercial right out of it.
Well, commercial, if you get into it, they got their own dumpster, you pay, all you do is pay for the dumpster, they dump it for free.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
or,
then you have to pay for the hauling.
uh,
Like, we'll take it for free, and one of the waste companies, multiple waste companies do have customers that they haul from. And bring to us and then we bail it, but we did it just because we didn't wanna see that little bit of waste stream disappear, like we spend a day at it doing the bail, make probably 4 or 5 bales a week, that's it. Just to keep the program going. But if, to be honest, if we don't see much of an uptake in it, we may try and push that off onto a private guy. And we'll see as we go forward. White goods collection. Going pretty well. As you can see there.
Eastern Charlotte, ain't it?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, it's kind of up.
Power grid sucks, so it's burning up all the time.
I'm sorry here before, can I ask you, I assume that bar represents. How do I, for Eastern Charlotte?
Per unit.
Per unit, correct?
Yeah. Sometimes with these, we found out last year, I don't know if it's happened this year or not, but we take the appointments. People call us, say, hey, I've got a bridge or stove or whatever, and we'll go pick that up. We put them on a schedule, they put them out. Well, one of the waste, like the recycle, metal guys kind of figured out our collection.
they get some for you.
And they get them over. You get there and there's none there.
Oh, there,
Yeah. And it's not a big deal, like it would be kind of great if they took them all.
It's different if there's hail cover, so
What's that?
they're not looking at the hail cover properly.
That's the problem. If we wanted to tighten up this program, or we wanted to do less of it, if we just switch to CFC containing and then push it really hard, because stoves and stuff, they're just metal, but if we downshifted and said, okay, we're just picking up CFC containing items and push it hard, that may be something we'd look at in the future. Then our HHW collection, was technically not a collection, it's a drop off. You can see that, this is a nice, kind of an interesting, graph. The liquid organic, most of that is a byproduct of Recycle New Brunswick's paint program. Because people bring us like linseed oil or paint thinner and all that stuff that, you talk about a paint program, that stuff should be in your paint program, but it's not. So we end up having to pay to get it all the way. Now, on the flip side of that, the province has been helping us with the Environmental Trust Fund to help us out with the HHW program. Last year we got, I think, 40,000, and this year we got 37. And that covers our costs of getting rid of this material.
You wouldn't get that if you didn't have this issue?
So
If we took care of this issue, would you still get that funding or something else?
it's at the whim of the province,
Okay.
really.
We apply for it every year.
Yeah.
But you have to attach projects to it, you have to attach what it is you're gonna do with it, you can't just like.
No, we could attach it to something else and get this taken care of and nothing, like you said, but where it belongs.
Yeah, in the paint program, but we don't have a lot of sway with them. It's, it is what it is, it's getting taken care of, it's not in the landfill causing a fire, things like that. Something you notice on there is the fluorescent tubes. That is actually a new EPR program that's coming out. It's probably by fall. The all light bulbs, lamps will be part of EPR program, so they're signing up people now to to be drop-off depots and things like that.
And so
We are,
closer to us, like,
they're
here,
hopefully
south.
the ball depot may take it on. Depending on, it all depends on storage and how much they actually pay. Like, the oil program, we have a lot of trouble with the oil program because they really don't pay much. And you've gotta have the tank and somebody to watch it, and if you get water in it, they charge you for taking it, and it's a difficult program. to
Probably
administer.
stability there too, environment.
Yeah, we,
Hmm.
that'll be next year's presentation. We just got a new tank from them. They finally bellied up with some equipment.
Do they still grind out the bulbs?
No,
No?
no, they go in containers and go. I assume they grind them at the other end, but,
Okay.
we looked into it years ago about having a bulb here.
Yeah.
But even though like it's set up to do it, they weren't the greatest at keeping the mercury or whatever's in those things. From the person grinding them to be breathing it in. It was dangerous apparently, so we never did that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's one more piece of it is website traffic, things like that, and it kind of mirrors our white goods program. All right.
Thank you.
Questions?
More questions?
No, I was wondering though, if we shouldn't reach out to Circular Materials, just on a little bit of a communication strategy on.
See that,
Right.
that's kind of the thing, we're. I guess we could as a commission.
That's what I mean, as us asking, because they're gonna come to us and look for answers and. We're not gonna have any.
Well, yeah, but they like, that's the thing, it's privatized.
Yeah.
So, we. Like I say, those numbers, I'm not even sure we're supposed to share them with them. Because it's all contained.
Well, I'm wondering if circular won't or can't, does it make sense to have Recycling New Brunswick come? I mean, ultimately, they're the ones that are responsible for the program.
What's happened in the past with these other EPR programs is they want the group, the towns to talk directly to circular. They don't really want to talk to us.
Maybe as a region, they could come and talk to all of us at once.
It's possible. They're coming to the. Was it?
St. Stephen's Innovation Trade Show.
Yeah, they're going to be there to.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, there.
Maybe that's what they're gonna tell us all.
And last year they were at the Canadian Town Market.
Just when you go to their website, you go under news, the last update was November 1st, so 6 months ago, and it says they've been operating for a year was the news. So like.
They have like a monthly.
Newsletter.
No, it's a webinar type thing, Teams meeting. That they have that, all the municipalities are invited to and they can make comments.
Can you send you the link?
Yes, please.
Okay. Put that on my
Yeah, you
phone.
have to sign up and then they'll send you like a little agenda, but usually they talk at you, not to you.
Are you on their phone?
So,
Can you send that out to the board?
It's the
I think
CAOs,
they do.
it's the CAOs that take the role.
Oh, okay, CAOs usually go, okay.
yeah, we didn't see nuclear waste in there.
So in my case, nobody, we store our own. Literally, literally do.
It's just 3 hockey arenas, I'm told.
Just about one more.
It's conservative.
Send it to Graham when you're done.
That's what you did. All right, so we've lost track of that. Anything else on solid waste, or I'll simply go for circular to everybody, and then maybe we can follow up with them about having a conversation about what their next steps are for fall. Local and regional planning, that would be you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Simon.
I'll try to be a little quick here. A little quicker. It's not as interesting as landfill, so I'm sorry, guys.
That's the most questions.
Yeah. I know everything about crushing light bulbs now, but. How do I call that? I took a raise format, it was really nice, so I was like, I'll snatch that and put my report in it. So to get cuts off, basically I talk about the strategic plan, sort of priority for the planning division. Next slide, please. There's just some images of some work we did. So vision, I think it's just mature, the planning division. I thought, oh geez, that kind of sounds like we're immature. But this is still the same essence, growth and excellence and within the division's current mandate. So our goals be to build internal capacity, improve service via technology, provide data-informed decision-making, regional collaboration for bylaw enforcement services. So we've been doing a lot of this in the last year. We've been working with a new GIS specialist. I guess next slide, please. Which has really helped our planning capacity. Last year was primarily what you call a research and development year when it came to local plans. So we really got Fundy Shore's rural plan developed. That was a first statements of public interest compliant regulation rural plan. So that process took some time, and I think we're pretty happy with it, and council worked really closely with us to make sure they're happy with it. And right now, the way we're doing planning services, we have planning and building services in Eastern Charlotte, Fundy Shores, Macadam, Southwest Rural District. So we're doing both your planning and your building inspection. In St. Andrews and Grand Manan, we do your planning and we do your building inspection, but we're working with your PACs. So it's a little bit of a hybrid. And in St. Stephen and Campobello, we're just doing your planning. Next slide, please. As I said, GIS has really helped us ramp up our planning capacity, but also what GIS is doing is we're working a lot with the other regional services. So we're working with Charlene on some mapping to do with economic development. And we started to support Sherry with some of the tourism work. So, and actually conversation with Ray today about how GIS can support community development. So it's one of these pieces where it has lots of hidden benefits to have greater GIS capacity at the Service Commission. Also, you might have heard through your CAOs, they would reach out to us on occasion to say, you know, we assisted them with some asset management mapping or something to do with finding some properties or vacant lands that you could develop. We've worked with a lot of you folks and your CAOs with our GIS capacity. When it comes to housing and local planning, I kind of see those, there's lots of crossover. With the planning work we're doing, we're trying to put forward the pro housing development policies that are desperately needed. We're in a housing crisis. And so each and every plan, as we work on them, we're looking at opportunities for where you can get multifamily housing developed in a compatible way to keep the character, the neighborhoods and community that you guys want to see. But making sure that when a developer comes in to do an application, they're not going to have to jump through a lot of red tape and a lot of hoops, and to make sure that there's good sites available in your community for development, for housing. That is the number one thing you'll hear from a developer, is make sure it's easy to work with us. And I'm sure some of you have heard the opposite, because, you know, we do make sure things are done by the book. But anytime you ever have those kinds of calls, I would say reach out to me. We will coordinate. We'll make sure that if there is an actual issue, we will get it addressed. And that's my commitment to make sure that happens.
And I've seen it happen. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. So every time we're looking at these plans in your community, we're making sure we're doing the best practices for planning. Make sure you get the right amount of gentle density that works for communities. So as said, last year was very much a research and development year. The Fundy Shores plan, St. Stephen, St. Andrews, these were big municipal plan processes. So we did your background research, we did community outreach, surveys. And in both cases, we have draft plans that are either going to council or have gone to council, and we're now kind of moving along the steps toward getting those adopted, which is it's a pretty huge accomplishment. You know, we have 2 planners at the Service Commission, and you know, a community on their own who's trying to get a municipal plan and zoning bylaw done. It may be several $100,000 just to get those documents, and then the consultant's gone at the end. The nice thing with Service Commission, I would argue, would be that we're there to see it through on the ground. And if there's changes need to be done, updates, we're there to help you do those updates. So, so we also worked with Village of Grand Manan on your rural plan because it was done and recently, but it just happened right before some of the legislation changes. So we just want to make sure that rural plan will actually have some, like a 10-year lifespan. And so that work is concluded, but I shouldn't say concluded, we have a draft and we're working with your committees to make sure it really suits Grand Manan's needs. Unfortunately, HAF2, that was very disappointing news. We did have our housing specialists work with each of your CAOs to put forward applications that came from municipalities, but we were providing data, we were providing some of this, some of the content based on CMHC's recommendations. And we had advice that these were solid applications, there would be no issues. And then the whole region was denied for the second time.
Yeah, one was that too.
No, you can't comment on this, but I've watched some of the election stuff. They're saying that the conservative MPs were told not to make sure our areas never get that money. But that's maybe just but that's what's out there today. That's what's, yeah, what's my Karen is out there telling people, but I don't think that's true. I can't imagine that John Williamson would stop that money from coming there.
So I had a conversation with Adam Warden from Miramichi, and not to make it political, but 80% of the funding went to red ridings. But that means that some blue ridings did get money, so it's not a blanket. To be honest, it sounds like a finger pointing game, to be honest with you.
It's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
But no matter what it is when we pick up the phone and ask for help for something that was so important, it's such an important national initiative, there was no help given whatsoever. So, yeah, we can speculate, but the reality of the situation is, for whatever reason, this region wasn't, you know, a priority, to reserve any funding, so.
Yeah, and I will say that Xander did find it out, the fact that they have a pointing, like a rating system, how their points are allocated. And they started out with the CMAs, which is the cities, started out with 18 points just to start with, whereas rural areas would have 0. So it was really geared for cities and large municipalities to get access as opposed to rural.
Yeah, there's a lot of that unfortunate bias that rural areas aren't growing as fast as cities, and some of that's got to change because obviously, as you're saying, you guys had a 14.7, almost 15% growth rate, and we were just showing the vacancies across the region were at historic lows. So we had the data, we actually had the best practices in planning policy that would be implemented should council receive those funds in each community, and yet no. So the interesting thing is these are good policies to adopt anyway. So you know how Fredericton just had that big debate of 4 units? That was because of the HAF. So if you did the HAF, you have to do it. And a lot of the communities we work with, you guys already have that. You were already compliant in a lot of ways. There could have been further work done. And so you've been working with a really willing partner in Southwest New Brunswick. So it's frustrating as heck for us. But one of the things we're doing is saying, okay, well, we'll still, still have these pro-housing policies in your plan, still allow for developments where it works, get the infrastructure funding. So now the big push should be, we're not going to get HF. There are bigger funds out there too for infrastructure. You have the sites ready for development. You have the land. Let's get you partnered up with these levels of government to help. And so there's all kinds of other work, some of which was happening in 2025. I really can't talk about in this report, but we're not done to keep pushing the envelope here as much as we can from the planning division, but it's a collaborative effort with the other divisions as well.
So just to add that, I mean, not only did we not get the funding, the cities also have the edge of the end development being worth more than ours in our rural areas.
Mhm.
So the development, business case doesn't work as well for us. So all the more reason we need funding.
Absolutely.
You know, and we didn't get it. So it's a shame.
It is a shame, yeah. So building inspection, bylaw enforcement, so we adopted a new way of tracking enforcement, so we're using digital tracking for these enforcements, and really started in 2023, kept going in 2024. And so we had 93 properties closed for enforcement where matters got resolved. So it's a lot of the stuff doesn't come to council, so we're going out issuing notices, or we're issuing orders to comply, and it doesn't come to your desk even, if you're a council. So this is, again, a huge success, because if you can deal with a lot of these enforcement issues, which, you know, might be dangerous on site premises, it might be buildings that are unsafe because they weren't built to code, might be other types of zoning issues that are going to lead to land use conflicts and potential property value loss. If you can level the playing field through enforcement, you actually increase the and you actually
Decrease.
Sorry, what I'm trying to say is you improve the attractiveness of your region for investment. You create that level playing field and the certainty that if you invest in property here, you have reasonable expectations of what's going to happen around you.
Well, I guess the other thing I would say is that you would decrease the work, the reactive work, by proper planning and governance.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Totally.
that we deal with day to day, which will get better.
Exactly. Next slide, please. So this is just some statistics looking back to 2019. So you can kind of see the growth in how much work we were doing. I know we're going on 5 years ago. We've more than doubled the volume of construction permitted in the region. So 18 million in 2019, now 44 million last year. You can see a spike just around COVID, 59 million in 2021. And you can kind of see that reflected in some of the permit numbers. But our permit numbers are still quite high compared to 5 years ago. And we're not necessarily seeing a drop off in 2024. We may this year, but it's going to bear out to see what happens with some economic things. But with terms of dwelling units created, tracking beginning in 2022, 117 in 2022, 131 in 2024. There was a spike in 2023 at 215 dwellings created in the region. That was particularly due, I think, to a couple larger scale developments, some in St. Andrews, some in St. Stephen, one or two in Eastern Charlotte. But more or less that's about the numbers of dwelling units that are permitted on a annual basis in the region. And I believe that's it for me. Thank you.
Any questions?
Excited.
Yeah. Regional economic and workforce development, but I think we're out.
Yep, I'll just give a quick update here. I gave a lot of this information to the board at the end of November when we met, so I'll just kind of go through it quickly and give you a couple of updates. So for 2024, regional economic and workforce development, starting out with business support, we being the regional partners, funding partners, as well as chambers of commerce, depending on where we were. And went around 5 different municipalities and did info sessions for businesses. Education sessions to regional businesses were completed throughout the year in accounting and digital marketing. We supported those through the chambers of commerce. We also did a Support Southwest Buy Local campaign that was started in 2024. We have a subsequent campaign happening now. And a lot of social media and website updates and just driving people to the right resources. as well as regional business visits. Next slide. Last year was the inaugural year for the Southwest Business Summit. We had 170 people in attendance during the workshop piece of it and almost 300 for the gala. This year it's happening May 27th, 28th, and the theme this year is Future of Business. And we already have well over 100 registered, so we're expecting to have a good turnout this year. So the Algonquin again. Next slide. Regional development projects throughout 2024. So we worked with Future St. Stephen on an updated retail study that they had done an initial one in 2017. That was just transferred recently back over to Future St. Stephen with the hiring of the new president. We've been working with the Huntsman, as mentioned, on aquaculture and fisheries R&D park, if you will. So we did a development study for phase 1 last year to see what that would look like in terms of financial requirements and asset requirements. Planning Works has been working with us on all of these, FYI. So as Alex said, they work kind of hand in hand on a lot of these projects. The next part of this is working with site selectors on getting the word out about the property and then trying to attract some investment, as well as the marketing piece that will go along with that. And then, as mentioned previously, Exit 56 study with Eastern Charlotte, we funded part of that for that area to be looked at in terms of what's required to have it developed. That funding was done with RDC and the municipality. Lots happening under the workforce development piece, which is the working MD contract, talent pipeline, so recruitment, attraction recruitment, that's a big piece of it. We do 2 employment fairs a year, so to 2024, so where we had one in March, one in November. Youth Opportunities Expo in October. We have a contract with Practical Human Resource Solutions for employer support, so they supported more than 30 employers throughout the year with all kinds of HR issues. Somebody needed help with, letting somebody go, hiring somebody, having just general issues with HR, crosses the gamut of issues. They also put on quarterly human resource community education sessions for employers, and it doesn't have to be if you're in the HR community, it can be anybody that actually looks after staff. There were a lot of changes in immigration policy last year, as a lot may know, so that has really impacted our local workforce, and there's been a lot of support for employers in that area. We started an online jobs listing that we put out at least twice a month, which has had great results, and actually all of our key partners are using it as their one source for the jobs that are available in the region, so that's been a great initiative. One of the key pillars we have is progressive workplaces, because we have a lot of newcomers and we don't have access to as many as we did. Retention is key, so we're working with them on policies, training, education, whatever we can do to help integrate them better in the community. And part of that is the zonal immigration partnership, which we've spoken about previously. We were approved conditionally for the partnership. We still have to do a feasibility study this year for IHCC. And that resource would start in April 2026 at this point. And as stated previously, the intent of that is that they will help the employers, help municipalities. It's a community resource to help integrate newcomers within the communities. And then advocacy and promotion of the mandate. So just getting out to the community about what, help is available, especially in the human resource side of things. Workforce data collection. We have a really difficult time getting data that's specific to the region because of the fact that how Stats Canada captures it. So we're still always working on that and trying to get custom data from Stats Can. And a big piece of the mandate last year and ongoing to this year is youth outreach. So trying to keep the youth here, we have smaller population than we ever did. That's not going to change in terms of number of kids people are having. And with newcomers being not as plentiful as they were in order to attract people to work, we need to actually do what we can to keep people here. So that's the piece on youth outreach. And it's also not necessarily saying you all have to go to university. They're hearing the university messages. They know what they want to do if they want to go to university. Those jobs typically aren't local. We're trying to get them into trades, trying to get them, all the jobs that we need them to be in locally. And finally, healthcare community promotional funding. So 2024 was a lot of planning and getting information. A lot of these are happening now in 2025, but last year was the developing of welcome packages. And yeah, we did a lot of work around MB Health Link, so we got access to the data. We've been working with that data. We've had a couple of initiatives where we've signed up people who weren't signed up for access to primary health care. I think we've driven more than 1,000 on that list we've got since we started those initiatives. And just at the bottom of that says students that should be residents. So working with Department of Health, they're holding a initiative at the Algonquin at the end of September there'll be 100 medical residents that will be looking for places to go. So we're working towards that as our goal for a large promotion campaign. To try to get as many in the region as we can. On top of that as well, just as a quick update, I'm working with the municipality, municipal district of St. Stephen, and there's counselors actually on trying to figure out from Horizon what's happening with the clinic and what we need to do on the ground and to welcome potential physicians and get things in place the best we can for the new clinic. And that is it.
Questions or comments?
I had one question, something I had mentioned when we had a meeting with mayors there and we have the online job listing.
Mhm.
I recommended maybe having an online housing listing.
Mhm.
As mayors, we all get calls all the time, if you know the place up for rent or they're always calling us. I just wonder if there'd be a site that you guys can manage for that. The same ideas on job, the job listing.
I had a quick conversation with Xander and I think Heather Chase on that. And it's not as straightforward with housing, as you know, because it could be on a Facebook marketplace, it could be on Kijiji, it could be anywhere, whereas the jobs are being pulled from specific job posting sites. So that's one thing. However, I will say this, there's not a lot out there. Like, I don't know how often you could do a list because they're really, like it's basically what you can find, right? Or what ChatGPT can find or, and there just isn't.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, it's a lot of word of
I
mouth.
can't go anywhere. I go grocery store. I go
Yeah.
walk outside. If you know anything, let me know.
And I can see that too, because we've done cursory searches and in Eastern Charlotte, like if you look, there's nothing, there's no rentals
Exactly, that's why we're
posted.
That's why we get happy.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, what I'm getting, like, they're not posted, so it's difficult it really is word of mouth a lot of time, and as soon as one comes available, they don't even have to post it, right? They've got a wait list, they've got people looking.
Absolutely, yeah.
We could probably do something with like a landlord, or I don't know, like, it would have to be some sort of approved list, I would think. But you could do something with a list of people to contact.
I just like to say, here's a phone number, or here's a site, go there.
Yeah, and it could have people's contact information, but unfortunately, there's very few postings out right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
something to think about it.
Mhm.
One of the things we've just started in Macadam. Is I've taken a high school student that just graduated last year. And I'm training them in water and sewer. I'm not gonna be able to hire them. I've already got the guys, but I'm gonna give that young man an opportunity to get his water and sewer. And he can take that anywhere. Hopefully he'll stay here in the region, but if he goes somewhere else, that's good for him too. At least we got him a start. The other thing that I came into, and I mentioned at one of our meetings, and I'm not sure you're aware of it. Certainly I didn't let you know about it. I was contacted by some Ukrainian folks living in the US. They were actually out of Texas. And they're quite concerned that President Trump is gonna pass an executive order. There's about 500,000 of Ukrainians living in the United States under a protected status, so they can work there. But because of the problems that Trump is having with Zelensky in the war, he threatened to kick them all out. So they're gonna be looking for a place to land. And I think they would be excellent candidates. If he does kick them out, we should be prepared to take a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And I've already talked to the province about it.
Yeah.
And I talked to some other folks as well, just to see what the rules are about bringing them in. But I think they're well educated, they speak English, and they're hardworking.
Yeah, I think if anything, it would be the red tape for sure.
Where you gonna house them though?
Hmm.
That's my.
Well, that's the other thing we did.
We
We
could,
just,
we could take a whole bunch more if we had place to put them.
I'm in the process of buying houses and fixing them up.
Right.
In macadam so that we will have a housing stock. And we'll turn around, we'll sell them, or we'll rent them, one or the other. But I'm finding that the housing is so short, that if I don't do something, I say, I counsel, if we don't do something, then I can't depend on government to come in and solve the problem. So we need to solve the problem ourselves. And this is one of the ways we're doing. I'm already clearing land for a small homes project,
Right,
so that we can get that moving.
But that goes back for Fundy Shores, and I got the meeting next week with government, is land, and it's been for 2 years.
Yeah.
We're ready to build, we have investors, we have people coming to us almost daily, well, every third day. One to build, one to do it, but the government keeps shutting us out on land.
Yeah.
So. And
That's
there's all kinds
We've
of
asked
land
them to
around
give
it.
all their land to the municipalities, that's been asked, but it's not.
Well, we even keep one to buy it at a reasonable cost.
They
But
won't
they
go
won't,
reasonable.
they're charging me or the municipality,
value.
yeah, and it's much more than what a
Yeah.
private person going in to buy it, and all we want is the land, just.
I had
set
land,
land, and we can build.
I had land that's assessed at below 36,000, they wanted 117,000 for it.
Just happen to us.
And it failed, the development failed because of this, they would have been giving all that tax revenue. It would have been a shame.
Short-sighted, the tax revenue and also for the housing crisis, that alone, they should be doing something in terms of how much they should be giving it to, but they shouldn't be overcharging.
Have they got
it for sale, Danny?
So,
Have they got it for sale, the
well, we have to wait, so there's one piece we're going after, but now it has to go from one government department to the other government department first. And then it's up to them, if they send it back to the municipality, but then we gotta pay all the costs associated with it.
Yeah, so yeah, raised.
You can do that too behind the trees.
Yeah, we paid for appraisal, and then if you want it for, say, $1, it has to go in front of all cabinet. And you don't get to present it, by the way. In the case of DTI, owning land, DTI presents it, you're not even in the room, and you just get a yes or no. So the process is definitely broken when you hear presentations from different government agencies about how they're making land accessible. We're not feeling it on the ground, but I will say, last couple months behind the New Brunswick Community College, I've almost felt like the wind has changed a little bit. We're getting some support from various government departments, so I'm a little more optimistic. But as far as immigration, the original comment is, the reality is very quietly, our federal government is shutting the door ourselves because of the housing, like the New Brunswick Community College. There's programs that are going to be canceled over the next couple of years because the enrollment's down, because they can't access international students. And I talked to a young kid in St. Andrews, young man in St. Andrews. He was working a cook job. Well, the cook job no longer applies for his work visa, so he's trying to become a home care worker to stay in our country. So we are, and if anyone knows cooks, they're few and far between in this region. They're like restaurants struggle to find them. We're shutting the door on immigration that we actually need to work jobs that no one here is willing to do.
That's right.
I know there's a balance, but it's like a blanket wide policy nationally, and they're not looking at specific regions or kind of like the Housing Accelerator Fund giving us a filter on jobs we need versus.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and it's a one size fits all approach, and it's gonna really set back the talent pipeline in this region. All the momentum we almost have, because resumes are starting to come in again, but you're gonna see it go right back to where it was because of all these policy changes. So maybe because of the situation in Ukraine, maybe they'll get treated differently, but I will say that the amount of international workers that you're gonna see in your community working the jobs that you can't find anyone to work for, it's gonna suffer big time over the next couple of years again. We're going backwards again.
And we are reaching out right now to all the seasonal employers to see what their situation is right this year because of that. Especially at St. Andrews, but also the islands, everywhere across the region. Because there are some immigration, I guess, avenues that are still open, but people don't know about them. So it's not even just the immigration side, it's any side, like what can we do to help people find people? Can we upskill in certain areas? What can we do? Because we know this year, especially on the seasonal side, it's not gonna be easy.
The other thing I would flag on that, though, it's not just the jobs that people don't want to do. The only way that coastal has been able to continue operating the second ferry in the summer is because we have Ukrainians on Graham and Ann who have their engineering ticket and are working on the ferry. And because there's none in the Maritimes, like a fleet people to hire, so if they're in a very precarious situation, just operating the ferry, and those are good jobs.
So I hate to dwell on the past, because you can't do anything about it, we should learn from it. And like, when did we do the housing study and do the vacancy rates, how many years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this problem was coming. That would have been a win. We would be enjoying the wins if we would have recognized the urgency then and moved then, but we didn't. Because, well, we didn't get the all support, but we should have, because we'd be winning that, we'd have housing.
Still don't have the support.
And then we still, yeah, I know, but I mean,
All the success, at least for us as a municipality with housing, it's been with the municipality dealing with private developers on our own.
yes, yeah, that's it.
I can't point to the federal and provincial government. There is talk now of helping us make something happen. It's all been at the dime of the taxpayer. And again, usually working with private developers, because not-for-profit housing needs a pile of funds too, right? That's the only way we've had success, so it's frustrating, and it's not from lack of trying.
So I'm not even sure where we ended up down that rabbit hole, but I think.
Economic development.
Anything else on economic development, workforce development? All right, community development. You. You're so, right?
Yeah, do my best. Keep a high level. All right. This is hopefully short, time for questions, and maybe we'll get right back into what we just talked about. Yeah, there's a pretty good chance. But we'll go to the first slide here. Just to, community development is kind of this large overarching nebulous thing, so I find it's good just to remind us as best I can what that overarching nebulous thing is. But we'll go to the next slide, Ross, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So again, the overall vision, we're trying to see a Southwest New Brunswick that has opportunities, resources, and security for everybody to thrive and actively participate in the community. And my goal with the community development mandate here is do that through building collaboration and coordination. There are investments that come in through the community development channels. And we want to make sure that those things are effectively brought into the region, have a great overall impact. Where that focus lies in my work, primarily economic and social inclusion. So that's that ESIC piece that the acronym I always rant on about, that overcoming poverty together is the provincial poverty reduction plan. We also focus on community connection, collaboration, in the community sector. So those are with our nonprofits, any other kind of community service providers, just building the connections between those different groups, those services, activities, and it's connecting needs to where there's resources when possible. And on that front, supporting regional capacity building. So supporting communication, the movement of information, funding, networking, training and learning opportunities. So we'll get into some examples of that in the next couple of slides. And again, high level, who we work with, our primary partners is ESIC, Economic Social Inclusion Corporation. They provide annual funding for my work, along with set amounts for community action and transportation funding. And we're the regional partner that facilitates those little pots of funding. It's not much, but we try to make the most of it. Other key regional partners, I work closely with Heather Chase, and me when she's part of the team, and close with Kim Reeder in the Regional Capacity Resiliency Committee there. But I also work really closely with Kelly Harrell. She's with the schools, but with Horizon as a Healthy Learners School program, and then as Charlene Alice have alluded to, I work closely with them and Sherry. Of course, other key partners. I mentioned those ones as regional partners because they're all kind of working on a regional level, but then of course I'm working with municipalities and communities and then the nonprofits and community groups within them. Next slide. Okay, so I just kind of lumped it up into like 5 key activities that we've been working on over the past, well, over 2024. One really big success was Nick's on board, he's on screen virtually there, but having a community grant writer that was initiated in 2024 through regional resiliency funding, and we brought him on board under community development. Since that time, I mean, it took a little bit of time to get him up and rolling and kind of get our process figured and get communication out there and get him comfortable with the role. But in 2024, we figured out, pretty well. He supported 73 different organizations, and that support can look a lot of different ways. It can be as simple as, having a conversation or email exchange about, hey, do you know if there's any funding for this kind of project? And then he sends a response, but it could also be, he's, working with them for the next couple of weeks, couple of months on a project and helping develop a funding application for that project. So over that course of time, 50 plus different projects, again, big, small, that he's worked with organizations on, and also 36 funder connections. What we mean by that is, he's connected them to a funder, and maybe that means he's on that project with them for a couple weeks or a couple months, or he's just simply pointed them in that direction. But we're trying to just, wherever the organization's at, try to help make those connections. So network development and communications. Goal here is to support pathways for communication, understanding, collaboration, and this, when I think of community development and the work that we're doing with nonprofits, I'm trying to see it as a network. Like the more we're working together, the better it is. And there's lots that, all the different food banks, they're so focused on what they're doing, and they're working at 150%, sometimes 200%. But there's still value in connecting, different resources that this food bank might be getting, but this other one didn't know about it. And so, trying to just get some of that information channeled and back and forth. So some of the ways I do that network development and communication, I've got a network newsletter that goes out once a month. I got 240 people on that list, and that's a variety of like residents to community nonprofits and all that good stuff. In that newsletter, there's generally news for the month from provincial or federal or other things that are of interest. Usually funding opportunities that are coming up that month, as well as different training opportunities or learning opportunities in the communities. And then as part of that too, we've hosted a number of workshops, involved in different forums or information sessions that will be, inviting different groups to, and roughly over the 2024, there's 250 people that we've connected and reached through those activities. So, and then some of that ESIC stuff, there's kind of 2 big areas that we work on here, at least in 2024. ESIC did their whole renewal of their poverty reduction plan for the province in 2024. Many of you know, many of you participated. So, there's a lot of work that focused on that for me. Just sharing that information, hosting different community dialogues, promoting the online survey, and then also working with ESIC on just kind of keeping up on what they're doing, what they're doing, where things are looking, and even doing a little bit of planning in the fall with my colleagues across the province that do similar stuff to I do, but with ESIC to kind of look at where they were at when they had whittled the priorities down from the 50,000 or so comments that they had. So, but yeah, I was pleased that we got the participation that we had in our region, through over 300 participants, through the survey, through the information sessions. And I do feel like our community was fairly represented in there. That Overcoming Poverty Together plan. Was launched in February, and we're working on integrating it into our planning now, and I believe we're looking at a presentation, for the board coming up here in June, by ESIC. So, just to give you a little bit of insights into that. Next is, still again related to ESIC, but this is the funding that comes through. It's always good to show you guys where some of that funding has gone to. Next slide. But through that community action, community transportation grants. Now this funding is fairly focused. It depends on what those poverty reduction priorities are of the day. And this, in 2024, we are kind of closing out the 5-year cycle, and the focus was on school food programs, mental health supports, and access to recreation. So all of the 12 different projects that we worked together with those partners to kind of go through the application process, approval process, and we act as a flow-through funder for that from ESIC to those projects. All of those relate to, you know, those 3 areas plus the community transportation piece. And so I've got that noted in the report, you know, those different projects. And then one note about the community transportation, like this transportation funding from ESIC is really been set up to go towards the volunteer driving programs across the province. So in our case, that goes to Charlotte Valley Ride, which you know, we're pretty happy to work with because they're an established group, and as you can see, this past year they provided over 9,000 drives. So you know, they do a lot of work with a little. Volunteer drivers, and they work really hard. And we're there. I'm there to try to support them as much as I can, which is sometimes trickier because they're their own entity, they're their own organization. But we work really well together where we can. So let's see, anything else I need to highlight? Finally, regional resilience, just wanted to, you guys all know I work with Kim around that stuff. But you may not know that we provide kind of that administrative support, so they get $50,000. It comes through us and then we distribute it, so we're just kind of a fiscal agent, I guess, so. But we do sit on that committee, and so I just want to highlight a few, things about that, so that you guys are aware. So the regional resiliency funding, even though it's 50,000, it's pretty unique. It goes directly towards supporting community capacity connected to like resilience activities and emergencies. So it's kind of like, how do you support communities before the emergencies even happen, like building that resiliency piece. So there's a variety of like small to big projects that has gone to fund over the past, but I do think it's interesting just to highlight again, this is where the regional grant writer position came from in 2023, that committee said, you know what, community organizations really struggle having the capacity to go after a lot of the grant funding that's available. So why don't we put it all together under one house and kind of have everybody have access to that. So they were the ones that kind of seeded that position, and we've been able to host it since. And then we're grateful that the board has kind of seen the value in that and continuing that position. So kind of a cool progression there. And then I do also just want to highlight one other project. So again, the committee, we worked on an emergency school food project. With Kelly Harrell, with the Healthy Learners, and a dietitian, Lori McKenzie. They've been doing school food surveys, something that I initiated a few years ago about what kind of school food programs there are, what are the needs, what are the challenges. And so through that, we identified 4 schools that had a higher food insecurity with the students. But also that also reflected there's a lot of capacities, let's say from teachers, from volunteers, and staff members that go in to make those programs happen. And that can add a strain onto those schools, but it's roles that those professionals and those staff members didn't anticipate. So we're trying to figure out new ways that we could support that or we can develop that. So we had a little bit of extra funding to kind of take that financial load off, trying this out with those schools. The cool story there is we worked with St. Croix Vocation Center. So they work with adults with differing abilities, and they provide employment opportunities, and really great success is that crew was able to provide transportation or delivery services for food that otherwise staff would be going and doing. And that's gonna look like it'll be kind of a long-term thing, so it's not a short-term thing, it's developed this partnership and this capacity. And it's kind of a win-win for the schools, win-win for the St. Croix Vocation Center as well. So it allows some interesting, things to be tested out, piloted, and address community needs. So that's it for just really high level things. Obviously, there's other things going on, and we could get into some of those projects if you wanted to, but there's always more you could be doing, but it's just Mick and I kind of holding things down with community development. Just want to thank the board and staff for letting us do this really great work. So yeah.
Not a question, just a comment, just following along in your journey. I find now, like when you started, it's mostly reactive work. It's like it's upstream proactive work is what it seems to be coming now, so we're really benefiting from this role. And it's really challenging for our citizens to see the benefits when the issue is growing around us too. So there's big wins, but you just don't see the wins because of the growing issue. So I'm glad to see the proactive work to help dampen the new stuff coming in. So that's great work.
Yeah, thank you. And there's still a lot of reactive work too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's always been, but it's good to get upstream.
Just, I know it's a standalone organization that you kind of partner with through project, but 9,000 plus rides with Charlotte Dial Ride. I don't think it's any secret though that their volunteers are aging and there's not many of them. Is there any partnership opportunity to really focus on recruitment of drivers? Has that happened? And just because I can see, I obviously didn't get the funding through the Rural Transportation Fund or whatever. This is all I know we have a couple other things like the, obviously, project, village car sharing. There's a few other things that, Huntsman has a bus, there's some one-offs, but for the most part, what we have is Charlotte Dial Ride, and I just kind of worry about the long-term viability of it right now with an aging volunteer population.
Yeah, that's a good comment to put out there in the airwaves. I have worked with them to, promote the need for volunteers, but I think, I would like to continue to work with them. I mean, we do work.
We
closely
met
together.
recently with them,
Yeah.
because a lot of their drives now are workforce related.
There
We
were
had,
like almost half of their drives are workforce related, which is,
like getting people to and from work,
Yeah.
and again,
Yeah.
people that are working can't do that.
Yeah.
So, it's because of that, it tends to be retirees, but then, like you say, the retirees that they have are fair, like they're not getting.
Do we need more incentives, money wise? There's something that could be, do they need any infusion of money in order to keep them going? People today, it's all about the dollar.
it is true. To like, you need to look at other ways too. So, I mean, I'm certainly open and their board chair and I have talked a little bit as well as their ED about like, what are some ways that, we can start to, work together, partner on, explore new avenues. So, and it does have to be, organization to organization, I think we can be a little bit more strategic, but we are having those initial conversations, we're not too far along them, but
They've also been in contact with Working MD recently to try to get us, at least a part-time funded position for drivers, which would help tremendously.
That would help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I do think, I mean, it's not for me to say, but I think those are opportunities. Like, it's not for me to say what should be done, but those are opportunities to definitely explore and see where we can help out and make those connections.
Project Village, but it was always frustrating me to see that car sitting a lot, but I'm not, it's on the go all the time, what's changed?
Yeah,
I guess being used,
yeah, I'm not sure.
it's literally not there, I've literally
That's
been
good
parking in the
news.
spot.
Yeah, yeah.
Just being on the spot.
President had a conversation next week, I think, their project manager, so I'll ask her.
Yeah, no, something's changed, because it's not there anymore, it's moving, and I see it on the charger, and I see it going.
It's great.
Good.
And like, again, it's, you know, what are they doing that's a little bit different to kind of say, okay, well, it wasn't working this way, how do we shift it to see if it can work better this way and not be used, so.
It's a commercial.
Yeah.
Maybe I challenge you with that.
Anything else under community development? All right, Sherry, you're up next, and John, I'm gonna give you the heads up that I have to leave by 8 o'clock, so if you see me run for the door, you're in charge.
Can we get your room in the hotel?
I don't St. Stephen to their hotel, but you know, that's just.
Oh. There'll be a couple rooms in the hotel.
All recorded too.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor. Hollis, are you gonna pull up my presentation for me, please? Or could you share? Oh, he's trying to walk away. Oh, he thought I was gonna handle it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Well, so my presentation, I'm been told to keep it down to 10 minutes. I'm going to try my best. So I'm going to today quickly run over again, just a quick overview of our key, our mission and our essential mandate, some of the key objectives and the areas of focus for 2024, some of our major milestones that we hit, and some very high level performance highlights for us. And then if there's time, some questions at the end. Hollis, is it sharing yet? I can't tell because of the way the screen's.
1 second.
There you go. I'm trying to get it in before Bonnie has to leave here. Okay, so you can hop to the next slide then. Thank you.
Which lighthouse is that?
That was the-
That's the right
Not mine.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so there's just a quick overview of everything that I'll go over today. Good. All right. Next slide, please. So I wanted to take an opportunity again just to really, reinforce what our overview or our services are for the commission. And it's essentially to market and promote the Southwest region to prospective travelers through various marketing channels. And ultimately, the main goal is to inspire people to come here. And the measure of our success is to really positively impact the local economy and boost the tourism through increased visitation. And we partner with various people and organizations, travel bloggers and writers, news and magazine publications, social media influencers. The province of New Brunswick is a really big partner of ours. We work a lot with travel media, and then we do the business to business travel product buyers for national and international markets. Next slide, please. So some of the marketing channels that I have been using last year was social media. So naturally our owned ones, so Facebook and Instagram. But then because of the partnerships that we've established, we're also getting our messaging across other social media influencers, travel and lifestyle bloggers. We had some great campaigns last year with Tourism New Brunswick and Parks NB that really helped amplify what we have to offer. And then, of course, we had our own targeted online campaigns and ads when it comes to social media. But then when we talk into the print, travel media, and radio digital space, we also worked on, getting our articles in several publications and digital magazines. We worked with having articles drawn up with travel bloggers and online newspapers. And then we did do a little bit of testing with some radio advertisements with a few key events namely the sandcastle competition and some support for some of the Christmas events that happened in the region during the winter. And then, of course, our business to business marketplaces. So those are the travel trade shows and conferences that we attended, 2 of those, and then we hosted familiarization tours. So that's when I go to the conferences and then I bring the buyers to our region and show them what we actually have to offer and make the connections with the suppliers, so the hotels and the excursion operators, to build travel packages for them to sell to, international buyers. The next slide, please, Hollis. So last year was our big year. It was the launch of our new services. So as simple as that was sounding, it was a big effort to get our new regional website up and built and off the ground. And that was a tool to use to just help people plan their vacation and inspire them to come to our region, more of an educational element. It was the first year that we were implementing our marketing and communications program, and both of those tools were essentially used to help launch our new services and generate awareness of our region as a fantastic place to vacation when you're seeking that authentic East Coast experience. So if you guys recall last year, or sorry, in 2023, we were working on the brand, getting kind of that key messaging out there. Last year was bringing it to life. And that we did. Next slide, please. So key areas of focus were essentially these 4 buckets. Building new partnerships with a lot of the travel bloggers and influencers that could help amplify our message. This included paid partnerships. We partnered a lot with the Explore St. Andrews and the tourism associations on Grand Manan and Campobello, as well as the travel trade partners. So all of these, specifically the province of New Brunswick, was a huge partner. So building partnerships with them to amplify our message. When we were rolling into 2023 and trying to plan for our 2024 year, we realized that we had a big gap in really nice images and video to actually market what we have. So last year, we worked on building out our photo library, getting some short form video, and also launching our crowd riff platforms. Some of the video that we collected last year with Hemmings House, we will be using it this year for our summer campaign, with a new promotional video that's going to be launched very soon. Last year, again, we aimed to inspire people to come to our region. So again, the online summer, fall, and winter campaigns that we launched through Meta, and you can see the one picture of the cell phone there to the side. That's an example of one of the many ads that we ran in market. And then we worked to, in all of the messaging that we had come out with, was to essentially promote the top attractions, the hidden gems, the top experiences and activities that you can have when you come to our region. Because what was happening were people were coming, maybe spending a night or 2, or maybe, and then driving on through to other areas. So the goal was to educate people on how they can spend 3 to 5, maybe even longer in our region, island hopping, and get to know all of the different locales in our region as well. Next slide. So some of the big achievements that I would like to just sort of highlight was, again, obviously the launch of our website. So there we have every single region listed. They have their own unique write-up within the website, but then all of the hotel accommodations and places to stay are on there. Most of the restaurants are up there. And then we have all of our excursion providers up there as well. So this is a tool that people can use to get familiar and plan their trip. It was really important to have that up and running before we ran any of our ad campaigns, because that's what we use to drive people to the website to help them connect with the different hotels and experiences that are available in our region. When we did that, on the top left-hand corner, you'll notice again, the small cell phone. So that summer campaign that we ran with Tourism New Brunswick, we had about 24,000 link clicks on the ad. And then that directly took them to our new website for people to explore. It reached about 3.6 million impressions, and 993,000 people saw those ads. Just below that cell phone, we attended our first marketplace, Rendezvous Canada, with several delegates from across the province to promote the entire region. So here I met with several buyers. I believe there was a total of 43 appointments that I had over 2 days. And from that, we had 7 FAM tours, so the familiarization tours, people coming down and getting to know our region as part of a bigger opportunity with Atlantic Canada. And the goal there was to, again, have them no longer do just day trips from St. John, because that's what was happening, and to really inspire them and find a solution for them to spend a night or two in our region with these travel packages that they were selling. So we hosted several of those. We had a lot of fantastic exposure in our digital media, and I'll flip to that towards the end on some of our metrics so you guys can see what happened. But we had excellent articles circulate through. And then finally on the bottom right-hand corner, I'm not sure which way you guys would be looking at because I'm not there in person with you, but the Explore MV with the street team, we partnered with them as well, and we were picked up and they were in our regional lot. So again, partnering with Tourism New Brunswick and a lot of our other municipal DMOs have really helped us amplify our message and getting us out there with the success that I'm going to show you on the next slide. So baseline KPIs. So this was the first year where we have a chance to sort of set the benchmark for how can we tell if we were successful or not. So when it comes to travel media, so again, that was all the mentions in media on newspapers and online. There was about 242 mentions of various Southwest New Brunswick locales on online and print. But those impressions converted to about 313 million impressions, which was fantastic. And to help you understand, typically what we would do is we would partner with Tourism New Brunswick and we would help sponsor a travel writer or a blogger's stay. Maybe it might be to cover their hotel or just a certain portion just to help them come down to our region. Then they post the publications in various outlets, and then they get picked up and it gets across the readership there. So in total, there was 175 authors, or if you want to call them travel bloggers from various outlets, 100 outlets, and some of the pieces that were picked up include National Geographic Traveler, CAA, Explore Magazine, and To Do Canada. So those were the biggest ones with fantastic readership. Our new website, again, it's a baseline year, so it's not actually year over year, it's a baseline. But we had 22,000 new users, engagement averaging about 23.56, so that click through our CTR rate. And we had about 107,000 sessions. So that's how many times people came to our website, looked at the different web pages, clicked through the different things to help them plan their trip. So baseline KPI right now. When it comes to social media year over year, we did do a big rebrand on our socials because it is one very small tool that we use to kind of help generate awareness. But we did have fantastic success with that. So the reach on Facebook, we increased by 400% to 151,000 people. And in Instagram, a little bit smaller. We're still working on building that up. But we saw an increase of 16% on that. Pardon me, guys, I'm getting over a cold here. Our Facebook traffic increased about just over 200% to 10,000, nearly 10,000 visits. And Instagram increased to was up by 64% year over year, at just shy of 1,500 or 1,500 people coming through. For our visitors, total trips, this one is interesting. So when we first started our strategic planning process, the numbers that we had benchmarked our strat plan on was that we had a total visitation of 300, just over 310,000 people total from US and Canada. And our visitor trend, total visitors for 2024 was 659,000 people directly to the Southwest region. Total trips of 879,000. And our average nightly stay is actually bumped up just a little bit, where it used to be 2.5, and now we're at 3 nights. So we've seen some incremental success, although last year wasn't as strong as 2023. 2023 was a great year where everything kind of started opening up and, post COVID. But we still saw some success, especially when we compare ourselves to the provincial average, which saw a little bit of a dip. But in all, we're incremental success in what we're doing, and we have some good baseline performance metrics now to start measuring our success on a go forward. I think I'm at my 10-minute limit, so I'm going to leave it there and leave it to you guys to ask questions now.
Wondering very forward. Oh, God.
Do you want the hammer?
All right, go ahead.
One question I wouldn't mind putting forward is, are we seeing any increase in the numbers? Since we've had this issue, with the US? Is there more discussion, more interest from Canadians?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been in contact with the province. We no longer directly collect our data on a monthly basis. The province collects it for us on our behalf. But we have been on a provincial level trying to measure visitor sentiment, as well as traveler sentiment. And we're working with them on tailoring some campaigns to kind of be a little bit just reflective of the current situation that's happening right now. The good news for us, though, is that we were already marketing to Ontario and Quebec and a lot of the others for that kind of the closer East Coast, right? So we're just going to kind of work on amplifying that message a little bit more. So I'd be going south, come east. And when it comes to our US numbers, StatsCan just released some visitor numbers last night. I haven't had a chance to kind of dig into it, but it did look like there was a big drop specifically for Ontario and New Brunswick, for our US traveler and our counterparts. So it might be a little bit too early to say confidently just yet if we're seeing a big impact just yet. But we do know that the lead times on some of the vacation, so for example, on Airbnb, we can measure how far out people are booking. We've noticed a slight uptick on the Airbnb reservations, and then our hotel partners, that's sometimes they're uh uh they don't necessarily release how far in advance they're getting their bookings or their occupancy right away. So right now it's hard to tell, but what we're seeing trend wise is Airbnbs that the bookings look up, or the lead time is up, and the occupancy rate is looking healthy. So I don't think we're looking at anything right now, but then when we work to get our summer campaign launched here imminently, we can probably measure and give you a clearer answer then. But StatsCan just release some data, but it's not for our region, it's for the province as a whole, which is why I'm always, leery to say yes or no. But
Can you tell, like, who's using the website? I'm probably the least tech savvy person here, but who goes on the Facebook pages? Can you tell what part of Canada they're coming from, or if they're coming from Canada?
Mr. Facebook.
Can you do that?
Oh, yes, I can pull, yes. So,
So that'd be one way to find it.
But in the same sense where they did that promo, where they marketed the website, will also skew who's going there, right? So if you market through NB Tourism, there was that successful campaign.
Right.
So depending on where they actually targeted that market, it's gonna skew who's actually looking at the website as well, right?
yeah,
So
but I do have all of that information. I could get pretty granular with it. So last year we focused on Ontario as our top market for attracting people to the region because that was our largest market opportunity. It's no surprise that Canada is our largest, people from Canada and Ontario were the ones that had the most visitation to our website. And then if we wanted to kind of get down into like the age demographics or if they were like men and women, I could get into that too. So yes, there's lots of great data in there for me to kind of dissect and absolutely.
Okay, yes, Councilor McKay.
Any chance you could send me some of these pictures so I can use them? Like I meet weekly with the mayors across Canada, and if I had like this East Coastness is showing in my background of my teams meeting, I could be advertising for us and just change it every week. So if I could get those pictures, it'd be really nice.
I can share a
If it's
crowd
possible.
platform with all of y'all, and you guys can pick the pictures. You guys all have, for the most part, this year we're going to do a little bit more work, but beautiful new photography and assets for every single region to help promote you guys. So I'll send that and I can send you all the branded stuff and you guys can knock your socks off. How about that?
Fair comment, no question.
In your discussions, with tourism operators, does that include the cruise ship operators in St. John? Of moving some of that back here?
Yeah, so last year, no. What we identified last year was that that's really left to the niche ports to do, right? So St. Andrews, Campobello, and Grand Manan. The problem being though, so St. Andrews has done a fantastic job. Explore St. Andrews has done a fantastic job at working with those with Aquila Tours on getting day trips down. It has been identified by Aquila that there's some logistical constraints when it comes to some of our islands, some of the other niche ports, or even if they were to come into, say, we can't, you obviously can't dock at any of our smaller niches, right? So getting day trips from St. John to the islands is a challenge. But it's really been left to, they're aware of our region, namely because of the niche, like Explore St. Andrews, really driving the day trips there. But
So
this,
for Fundy Shores, would that be up to Fundy Shores to pursue that?
yeah, well, it
market?
would have to be, there's a couple of things. So I think, um, there needs to be a developed product or an experience in order for them to be able to sell it. So, think of it like as like, when you port anywhere, right? There's an experience or something that you have to sell. So, what I've been advised by Aquila Tours is that if there's a community that's interested in bringing some day trips down and they've kind of got the logistics of, transportation or day trips sorted, I could make that connection and work together with Fundy Shores and make that connection and see if there's an opportunity there. But
We've had them before, that's the only reason I'm asking, and I guess running a tourism shop. It's St. John and the other way. This is really skyrocketed, so like Fundy National Park and doing that tour up through there. where they used to come this way and do New River Beach, Route 790, La Pro
Yeah.
Falls was a big thing. And now it's dropped off. So I guess I was just curious of who our tourism committee would contact to. Cause I know there's not just Aquila Tours, there's quite a few of them.
There is a few, but Aquila's been really sort of kind of like the main overarching one that really helps kind of make those connections for everybody. But they were also keen and they're open to tourism development opportunities. It's just a thing that with us, our sole mandate really is just simply the marketing and promotion of it. But I'm happy to make those connections to help you guys work on the tourism development arm of things to kind of get those tours going. So I can do that for you if you like, make those connections.
Yeah, no, certainly. And again, I'd like to see it extend. I mean, if St. Andrews already has that point and we're kind of in the middle to kind of bring it together, like down through Eastern Charlotte, and it would be nice to bring it back this way instead of going into St. Martin's for the day or Fundy National Park.
So the
Nothing
St. John port with the cruise ships actually drives our economy more than our own wharf with the boats that are coming, because they're so small. And they're not that regular. St. John though is, you know, a huge market, and getting those day trippers down to us is huge, but I almost think the bigger opportunity for the region's actually bus tours. You know, weather, and we have like St. Andrews, we have a, you know, the approach is actually pretty shallow, so if you have any size ship, they're gonna taxi it, and everyone that's ever been on a cruise knows that you try to avoid taxiing. But like, if you look at all the different islands and the day trips and like, the bus tours could hit us all. Anyone that comes to the wharf in St. Andrews generally isn't leaving St. Andrews, they're going to the downtown, they're there for half a day, they're back on the boat and going, so I think.
And that's what happened in Fundy Shores 2 years ago, is they would come down, do our whole Route 790, stop the falls, have lunch, where their biggest complaint at the time was they didn't have enough time off the bus, that something was right there for water or for snacks, so we actually used to go down and sell bottles.
And we had some learning this year that, like, for the cruise ships, like, there was a few that weren't coming, and the reality is that whether they're here in April or they're here in October, they wanna make sure that places are open. So they don't like to figure out what works for St. Andrews or what works for St. Stephen or wherever. They like to have a consistent offering the entire year with the program, so we're kind of building a program now where even Kingsbury's closed, that we have some type of experience if they come in April, right? Like, so there's learning there, but I, like, for the buses, I think are a huge opportunity for the region. Like, cruise ships, if you have a lunch and they call you and they cancel because of the weather, they don't pay you for that lunch. So you've got all that food prep, they don't give you $1 for it.
Because that's what they do in St. John, right? They get on the bus, a group of them, and that's all they do. They don't, it's not even, well, I guess it would be an excursion. They go out and they just drive the Fundy Trail, they get out at St. Martin's, take pictures, and
They're usually the buses are looking for, like, not paid attractions, right? They wanna go to, like, the Ross Museum in St. Andrews or the Courthouse, because it's just value that keeps the price down for them, that they get to show things. Now, they usually will have a couple spots they highlight as major attractions, but yeah, it's a huge market that.
The huge
I don't
market.
think-
And
Yeah.
well, I think that it just speaks to the transportation barriers too that we have, and there's a few things. It's a big conversation, that's for sure.
well, I just see it in my other business, cause just La Pro Falls alone. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's correct terminology, but we were doing a lot of business just for that, just that one thing.
And we have
Just
aging
getting off, taking pictures. and stuff.
population, so I think bus tours and cruises and stuff like that will become more popular than people that are just getting in the car on their own or even flying, right? So.
Mhm.
Okay, no, thank you, Sherry, for that.
Yeah, I'll make the connection for you, Mayor, and we'll see what we can.
Any other questions or comments for Sherry? Good enough. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
We'll move on to the CEO report. Paolo, that's you.
Thanks, I'm gonna make this real quick. We're running over time. But the couple of big points that I just want to point out is that next week, I'm attending meetings in St. John for essentially 2 days, so it's over 3. And it's kind of a big deal, this one, because it's all the CEOs in the province, it's all the RSC chairs, it's the associations. It starts off with the premier. And minister of ELG, and then there's a bunch of other stuff that happens over the next couple of days, so I'm expecting a couple of intense days, and I'll report back on what happens.
What bodies coming there, as a vision?
Assuming you vote her in for chair, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's easy. She's not here. She's not here.
We're doing that tonight?
The always person's not here.
We'll take it. The only other thing is that I did want to mention is that there is an exercise happening over the next year. I just found out about last week. ELG is going to embark on some kind of a review of regional service commissions and what's working and what isn't. I question their timing on this because they're looking to, if there are changes, to get into the spring legislature next year, which is also right at municipal election time. And I said, but anyway, I'll find out more and keep you informed. That's really all I want to talk about.
Great.
Don't let them forget about the rural districts.
Well, that actually came up as a specific topic. Okay, that you, me, Phil, and the same place, and there's a bunch of us that are like, this has to change.
What's that?
Thank you.
Where's that question?
Question and answer with the public.
Don't have anybody that's asked a question.
If you put a public in the room, anybody in the room? What's that? Okay, I just made a motion for adjournment. City council, that's right. Oh, Mayor McEachran. I used to say council.
Wow, we've been down for.
You are good to go.
Okay, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. This is the Southwest New Brunswick Commission Annual General Meeting. April 24th, 2025. Declaration of, we do have a quorum here tonight. Any acknowledgement of visitors? Mark, here, I get your, third visitor.
Didn't wait.
I see, DPG, adoption, okay, conflict of interest, anybody has any conflict of interest? None, okay, adoption of the agenda, I need a motion to accept the agenda, okay. Thanks. Jim Tubbs, second that. Question or comment on that? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye, contrary, that's passed. Adoption of the minutes of the AGM, I need a motion for that. I'll second it. Okay. Harvey? Kenny? We have a motion on the floor to adopt the minutes. All those, any question or comment? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, that's passed unanimously. Motion on the acceptance of the audited financial statements, motion for that. Okay, Mayor. I just used to say it.
The custodian Henderson.
Sergeant Henderson, okay.
He's still there. That's worse.
Okay, and seconded by McEachran.
Mayor.
Mayor, you work directly. Okay.
I know.
We have a motion on the floor, we have a second there, question or comment? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. It's passed unanimously. Okay, then we got the appointment of the auditors for 2025.
So the auditors that we suggest are the ones that we've had is Feats on the Doyle.
It's audited. So I need somebody in, to make that.
I would move that
Jim,
Chief Butters will be appointed as the auditor for the 2025.
We have a motion on the floor, any second or Councilor. Mayor Stanix.
Sorry, Harvey.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, we have a seconder, any question or comment? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Contrary, that's passed unanimously. Statements of disclosure.
So the statements of disclosure have been handed out to all of you folks, and some of them are all.
All signed and all brought back and all.
All back and signed, so that's a declaration of any conflicts of interest for operating as director on this board, so that's complete.
Great. Okay, next is the election of the board officers. I'm gonna have to, Hollis, go to you, Hollis.
Yep, so as of this point, then the executive is dissolved, and I'm gonna go through the process of the election. Our current chair, Bonnie Morse, is not here presently, but she has indicated that she would accept a nomination. So I'm gonna call for the nominations 3 times. So are there any other nominations for chair? Any nominations for chair?
Nominate Bonnie.
Any nominations for chair? Hearing none, I declare Bonnie Morse by acclamation as our chair.
Excellent. Congratulations, Bonnie. Yes.
Let's give her the rest of the positions. She's not here.
That's right. There she go. She get home.
Okay, I'm gonna call for nominations for vice chair. John, are you going to?
I'm going to stay vice chair.
I'll nominate John.
Okay.
Okay, any nominations for vice chair? Any nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, I declare John Craig by acclamation as our vice chair.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Try to get our names right for this year.
I did a lot of advertising for this job.
And so the third and final officer is going to be our officer at large, currently Jim Tubbs. Jim, do you want to let your name stand for this year?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Are there any other nominations for officer at large? Any other nominations for officer at large? It's my third ask. Hearing none, I'm going to declare Jim Tubbs our officer at large by acclamation.
You're doing a great job, buddy.
Here. Next is the
Back to you.
And the next thing on my agenda, on the agenda tonight is the CEO statement.
This is just my opportunity to give first of all, you all saw previously in all of the reports from all the staff, and I just want to give a big thank you to the staff that work here. I couldn't do this job without them.
100%.
And what you saw tonight was only the tip of the iceberg, and I tried to get them to hold it down as short as possible to get through a meeting. But that's just a sliver of what they do on an everyday basis, and there's just an enormous amount of activity that happens around this organization. So I just want to give a public thank you to the staff that do that. I also want to give a big public thank you to you guys, the board, because you put up with me for the last few years, but this board has really come together really well. And you wouldn't be able to say that about every other region in this province. And you've been very supportive about everything we've done. We've come together, we've pulled in the right direction. And the successes that we've had is directly because of you guys and enabling us to do that. Next year's municipal elections, so obviously things are going to change. I would love it if everybody just ran again and won again, but obviously I know that's not a possibility, especially with our St. Andrews mayor here, who we're only going to see a couple more times. So, but anyway, huge thank you to you guys for supporting the organization the way you did. That's all I had to say, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. As chair, I get to say something. I want to thank you all for the good work you are doing. I know myself personally, I have a lot on my plate, just being the mayor of Eastern Charlotte. It's great to be able to pick up the phone or just send you a quick email and you can answer something just like that. So it's always nice to have you right there. So thank you very much for the job you do. So question and answer with the public.
I do not have any emails coming from the public.
Great, so I just need a motion for adjournment. We got McEachran and Henderson.
Just too quick over there.
Right.